All right, y'all ready? All right, it is now 7 o'clock p.m. Tuesday, August 11th, 2020. We're here for our regular board meeting, virtual board meeting. We'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Ms. Grahowski, will you please call roll?
I'll be calling roll. Okay. Andy Green.
Here.
Rick Lama.
Here.
Dr. Darlene Pomponio.
Here.
Sean Sage.
Here.
Mr. Jason Craig.
He said here, but he's muted. Here.
Mr. Neil Freitas.
Here.
Mr. Tim Estimer.
Present. Thank you very much. We have a quorum. If we could stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Which flag? Which stand? Thank you. All right, Southgate's mission statement, Learning for Life. Our vision statement, Southgate Community Schools, the best choice for students and parents. Moves us to item B, revisions and approval of the agenda.
Mr. President.
Mr. Green.
I would like to move that we flip-flop consent item G with action item H for the purpose of continuity. The purpose for my proposal is that after the citizens' comments and the board's responses, if any, then we will move right into the presentation of the COLT team. And then from there, questions can be asked immediately instead of flipping back and forth. Thank you.
And then go right into the action item. All right, sounds good. Do we have support on that?
Support.
Dr. Pomponio. All right. Any discussion? All right. All those in roll call vote, please.
Dr. Darlene Pomponio.
Yes.
Sean Sage.
Yes.
Jason Craig.
Yes.
Neil Freitas.
Yes.
Andy Green.
Yes.
Tim Estimer.
Yes.
Rick Thomas.
Yes.
Got everyone?
Yes, motion carried.
Thank you. Motion carries. We have an agenda. All right. Before we get to citizens' comments, I just wanted to go over a few things for those watching and from home, just to kind of let you know what this meeting is going to look like. So a member of staff will read the submitted comment. Yes. We had somewhere in the neighborhood of 30-ish, I believe, turned in. So that'll take a bit of a time. Those are timed at 3 minutes, and they're going to be. If you could turn your mic off for me, please. Before we get to citizens' comments, I just wanted to go over a few things for those watching and from home, just to kind of let you know what the meeting is going to look like. So, a member of staff will read the submitted comment. Yes. We had somewhere in the neighborhood of 30-ish, I believe, turned in. All right. A member of administration is going to read the comments, so thank you for that. After citizens' comments, we'll have a presentation, which is the COLT team's presentation. We'll have an opportunity, the board will have an opportunity to ask questions before going into the first action item of the night, which is approval of that specific COLT team discussion. So that's sort of what things are going to look like right now. And do you guys have any questions on how that's moving forward? The board? Okay. All right, Ms. Pastor, we'll go ahead and start with citizens' comments, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Martin, as most of you are aware. We're going to go ahead as through the administrators, and we're going to go 3 at a time. So I'm going to take the first 3 comments. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera so I can take a look at the spreadsheet that the comments came in. And Mrs. Pastor has the timer going. So Mrs. Pastor, if you could just let me know if I go over, because I won't be viewing this screen. I appreciate it. All right, our first comment comes from Mr. Christian Schoenemann. It says, Per Mr. Estheimer's suggestion, we are submitting the following to be read aloud at the August 11th school board meeting. Mr. Estheimer, I attended last week's school board meeting on the preparedness of the teachers and staff to begin virtual learning. I'll be attending the August 11th meeting as well. We thank the board for the decision to prepare for virtual learning. We feel this is the best method for safe and expansive instruction for our children. We know this was a very difficult decision, but we are thankful for this decision that was made. Based on the lack of enrichment that Atlas brings per email discussions with Dr. Baker-Herring and the full spectrum of classes the Southgate system can offer, the most logical decision at this point is to maintain a virtual learning environment for our children. My wife and I have 3 children in the Southgate School District, Hunter 13 going to 8th grade, Evan 11 going to 6th grade, and Kara 8 going to 3rd grade. Both of our boys have asthma. In speaking with our allergist, pulmonologist, and pediatrician, our decision is to keep our children at home for at least the first semester. The hope is that the cases/deaths will diminish over the winter, allowing mass-to-mass school in the spring. The quality of education available from the Southgate teaching staff far surpasses the programs available on Atlas. I have been in direct contact with Mrs. Pastor, as well as Dr. Baker-Herring, about Atlas, as was our first course of action if the children were not able to access Southgate teachers. In these discussions, the Atlas program partially meets our needs, but it does not include advanced courses, foreign language, and extracurricular activities, such as engineering, medical detectives, art, music, band, computers, etc. I know Dr. Baker-Herring has been looking into other programs for Atlas, but appears to be more of a knee-jerk reaction to get these programs in versus what is already the curriculum in the Southgate schools. If you would like further information, schedule some time to discuss, or would rather write to us on our thoughts, please do! Exclamation point. Again, thank you for keeping our children safe, as well as the safety of the teachers and staff. Thank you, Christian and Katie Schoeneman. Our next comment comes from Jenny Fullwider. It says, I was very nervous with the school year coming. I was in touch with Atlas before the decision was made because I work in a nursing facility and know firsthand how the disease works. I've seen it takes its toll on a person. I am extremely happy with Southgate's decision on going remotely. I wasn't going to send my child to school to wear a mask that he won't stop playing with or touching. Parents need to keep the kids safe, and in person is not safe. Also, the masks are not good and have long-term effects on the respiratory system, so thank you again. That's the end of the comment. The next comment comes from Deborah Swarthout. Her comment is, with the virtual classes being curricular, how is the feasibility working for parents? Question mark. My incoming kindergartner will not sit still for the online Atlas classes, and my husband and I both work full-time and cannot and will not quit or lose our jobs to homeschool. In parentheses, that will create a whole slew of other problems. These young 5- and 6-year-olds need social interaction and a face-to-face teacher. What is your plan for the working parents? Question mark. Are we just supposed to quit our jobs? Question mark. That's the end of the comment.
Okay, this is Renee Chilson. This comment is from Mia Martinez. My 12th grader is currently doing credit recovery summer school classes online with Mrs. Sisler. Can he continue with this platform until schools reopen, or will they be using a different platform? Question mark. This has really worked for him. End of that comment. The next comment is from Ramona Baca. First off, I would like to say thank you for thinking of the health and safety of our children and all staff. When will we be able to get the Chromebooks, and will we have tech support to help us? Is there going to be more locations to pick up the lunches? Some of the families, by the time they got a ride over to Davidson, they ran out of food. That's the end of that comment. Comment from Stacy Winters. Please open schools. According to the experts, Michigan should be safe. I like with the proper equipment and the little extra work Southgate can do it. Our children deserve their school to open. Other districts can do it for their kids. Why can't Southgate? Question mark.
Thank you, Mrs. Chilson. This is Andrew Hennick. I'll be reading the next 3 comments. The next comment is from Dane Zenbug. As of right now, Gibraltar, Huron, Flat Rock, Riverview, Trenton all plan on giving parents an online or FTF option. Woodhaven is undecided. If Southgate does not offer the same option, is Southgate preparing to lose as much as 10 to 20% of their students through school of choice? Once a family gets comfortable in a new school, it's highly unlikely they will come back. Only offering one option will devastate the budgets for years. That's the end of that comment. The next comment is from Rebecca Ayer. As the board taken into consideration the CDC guidelines urging that schools allow children to return to school with face-to-face interaction. If we are in phase 4 that allows children to return to school and most districts downriver are following these protocols, why does Southgate differ? Do we lack funding? They don't? Or do we have the resources that others have? If we do not resume face-to-face at the beginning of the school year, what will it take for a child to eventually return to school? What further will need to be implemented? Will we need to be in phase 5 before a decision is made? Next comment is from Melissa Hurst. Dear Southgate School Board, I was so relieved last week when it was decided Southgate schools would open remotely in the fall. I've heard that since the decision was made, you've had lots of parents reach out that are concerned with the plan. I understand that opening remotely will be a logistical and monetary nightmare for many parents. I understand that it will be easier for them to just have the kids go to school. I also understand that we are in the middle of a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. Life should be different right now. We shouldn't be going about our daily business as usual, seeing our friends and heading to the movies on Friday night. We should be hunkering down and riding this out until it's safe to resume normal activity. Many times over the last few weeks, I've looked across the street at Anderson football field to observe the football team practicing. The practices always start with social distancing and always end with shoulder-to-shoulder, face-to-face scrimmaging. In my opinion, that is so disappointing and downright scary, knowing that these kids may end up sitting next to my kid in class. I ask that you hold firm to your decision that was made to proceed with remote learning, as it could mean life or death for the students or staff members. However, I know that my opinion is one of many. Before in full person learning is chosen, I would ask you to consider the alternative half remote and half in-person instruction approach other districts are using. I've known I feel a lot better knowing that my kids were in a 15 socially distanced classroom than a 30 student classroom of sardiness. Apologize there. It is my understanding that this approach would provide in-person instruction 2 days a week, 2 days a week for completing assignments at home, and 1 day for record keeping and virtual meetings if requested. I see multiple advantages to this approach over the full in-person approach. First, the need of social interaction would be fulfilled. Kids get to see some friends again. Second, since social distancing could be achieved in most circumstances, the risk of transmission would go down. Third, working parents would have 2 fewer days to find childcare, and the other 3 days to be used to complete assignments at the child's or parent's pace, not necessarily during school hours. Finally, and most importantly, I view it as a compromise. You can't make everyone happy, but you can appease most of us. Again, I would prefer the remote learning approach. It is the safest approach, but I do understand what it's like to find and pay for childcare. If we do go back to in-person learning,
Fine.
let's do it safely, integrity, and not throwing caution to the wind.
Okay, this is Michelle Baker Herring, and I will read the next 3 comments. This comment is from Shannon Swagger. Dear Southgate Community Schools Board of Education, this year I'll be starting my 20th year as a Southgate educator and my 6th year as a Titan parent. I have 3 children that all attend Ford Line Elementary School. I attended the special board meeting held on 8/3/2020 and want to send my words of gratitude for the direction taken during this meeting, resulting in a decision that put the safety of our students and staff first. When you make decisions based on safety first, it will always be the best decision. My most heartfelt appreciation is given to the board for the support you are showing all Titan families during these unprecedented times. Thank you for making hard decisions. I have full confidence in the staff of Southgate Schools to continue to offer a robust learning experience through Schoology remotely. I also have full confidence that the board will continue to make the safest choices when faced with future decisions as we journey through this school year together. Warmest regards, Shannon M. Swagger, Boardline Elementary School Reading Specialist, proud Titan parent of 3 awesome boys. That's the end of that comment. The next comment is from Mary Hildebrandt. Dear Board of Education, you've been elected and charged with making the toughest decision any board member has ever had to make in the history of Southgate: how education will begin for the 2020 school year. I acknowledge that face-to-face instruction is the best for students, staff, and parents. I know by opting for 100% online teaching to begin the school year is unpopular for many reasons, including the added pressure it places on parents, students, and staff. However, I believe that it will produce continuity. If indeed there's a huge spread of COVID after school begins, face-to-face or mask-to-mask instruction will have to be uprooted, causing additional chaos. I believe that beginning with 100% online, Southgate teacher-instructed plan will give more continuity to all involved. Then as time plays out, revisit. This too shall pass. Everyone will get through this. Sincerely, Mary Hildebrandt. That's the end of that comment. Next comment is from Heather Ray. I really think the idea of virtual orientation for the incoming 6th graders, whenever that may be, is not going to be beneficial. When the schools open up for face-to-face learning, there should really be a day, evening set aside for them to come to have a proper orientation. My older child had an all-day orientation and went to middle school while in 5th grade and had staff come to talk to the class. Much more prepared to enter middle school with having done all of that. I feel if the incoming 6th graders deserve something, rather than going to a new and larger school they haven't been prepared for. That's the end of that comment.
Hi, this is Wendy Nowak. I'm going to read the next 3 comments. This comment was submitted by Lindsay Prang. I don't feel my children will benefit from the Atlas program as much as they would from the Southgate teachers. But with 2 working parents, we will not always be able to get them online at the scheduled times. Will there be a solution for this issue? I am scared they will fall behind otherwise. Thank you. Next comment is Patricia Campow. I have mentioned to a school board member a while back stating we could split the district doing A through M Monday, Tuesday, and N through Z on Wednesday, Thursday, and save Friday for teachers to plan for the next week ahead and for students who need a little extra help. He told me they were looking at that, but not having school on Wednesday so they could clean. I said, great idea, keep the same kids together. Now you're just doing all online with no parent or student input. Why? When Detroit schools are going back with a choice. We could have even done half dates 2 times a week to start, baby steps. We can't live in fear or a bubble. Kids need to go back to the classroom. I feel there was no effort put forth by this district for the benefit of the children to try and get them back to class, especially when Detroit, Groseal, Gibraltar, Gabriel Richard, just to name a few that I know of, are giving an option of face-to-face or online. Thanks for your time. The next comment comes from Kevin and Linda Doyle. Both my wife and I work full-time as essential workers and are unable to work from home. We do not have anyone to assist during the week. With 3 kids enrolled in the district, shutting down the schools is literally impossible for us. I can only imagine single parents with the same issues. Even if parents were able to work from home, how can they physically complete their work and ensure their small children are completing the necessary tasks? End of comment.
All right, so this is Jason Martin again. I'll take care of the next 3. The next comment comes from Linda Spiro. It asks, what is the situation with the preschoolers? Question mark. Are they still following the school district decision? So if the schools are not open, preschool will not be as well, question mark. What about registration for those parents they need to register their children? When are those going to be offered? End of comment. The next comment comes from Diane Henry. It says, how will the school district be handling students with IEPs that need one-on-one assistance to be successful? I am very concerned about how my child with disabilities will handle full-time online learning. Also, I have 3 students in my house. Will they all need a computer to access the curriculum each day? Question mark. Will the district allow them to borrow a computer for the school year? Question mark. We have 1 computer now. Thank you. The next comment comes from Carrie Phillips. Why, if it's not safe for teachers to return to classrooms, is it safe for our kids to play sports and contact sports at that? Question mark. There should be no sports if there is no kids in classrooms. Sports should only be played by kids that are physically in school. My children have ADHD and failed terribly with the end of school online school. They need to be in a structured classroom. This online school is setting kids up to fail. If people go to work and make it a safe environment, we can make our classrooms safe. I work 2 jobs, one on healthcare and one in retail, and I do what I have to do to be safe for myself and my family. Why can't my kids get the education they need for their future? And these kids are our future, and we are setting them up to fail, period. End of comment.
This is Renee Chilson again. Comment from Jennifer Pipta. Good evening, Board of Education and Jill Pastor. I would like to take a moment to say thank you all for the very hard decisions that you are trying to make for our school district. I know that this decision is a very tough one to make and that not everyone is going to be happy with the outcome. I am a parent of a 7th and a 10th grader. A few years back, we moved out of the district, but chose to keep our kids in Southgate because of the teachers. It was one of the reasons that we chose face-to-face for our kids. The decision to do so wasn't easy, and it has caused us a lot of anxiety because of the nature of my job. I am a sepsis coordinator at one of the local hospitals, and I have been working alongside our infectious disease department. So like many of the nurses in the district, I have seen the effects this pandemic has created in our community, and I wanted to take a moment to make sure that the decision to go remote or to go face-to-face is made based upon science and not off of fear. As a parent, I wanted to make sure to do my research so I can make an informed and educated decision. This virus is not going away soon. It does affect school-aged children, as many states that are back in session are seeing. I think that it is important that we learn ways to best deal with it. I am not asking the district to completely postpone face-to-face learning, but what I would like to see and what I think would help alleviate a lot of stress is to delay face-to-face learning and go remote with the Southgate teachers who know our children the best. While doing this, the district could then begin to institute many of the CDC guidelines for a safe return to school and prevent the rise of cases in school-aged children. The current CDC guidelines can be found at these CDC websites. There are 2 websites that this citizen gave, and they were shared in the comments, and Mrs. Pastor will forward those links to the board as needed. Many of the plans outlined are paraphrased to save on time. Preparing K-12 school administrator for a safe return to school in fall 2020. It states, engage everyone in the school and community to practice preventative behaviors. Implement multiple COVID-19 mitigation strategies, social distancing, cloth face covers, hand hygiene, and use of cohorting. Communicate, educate, and reinforce appropriate hygiene and social distancing practices in ways that are developmentally appropriate for students, teachers, and staff. Integrate COVID-19 mitigation strategies into extracurricular activities, limiting or canceling if social distancing is not feasible. Maintain healthy environments, cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched surfaces, and allowing for the appropriate dry time with the disinfection product available. The dry time must be observed for disinfection.
It's time, Renee.
Yes, thank you. Next comment, Martha Hancock. Good evening. First, I appreciate the choice that you, the school board, has been forced to make. There really are no winners at all in this situation. You can only be guided by the knowledge you are given in your conscience. Never before in my lifetime has my health and safety been tied to what my neighbor does or where they go in their own free time. But now it matters. If my neighbor or my friend isn't adhering to social distancing and mask wearing, exposing themselves to crowds, or going out of town to cities that have a lot of cases, it could adversely affect the most important thing in my life, my children. I understand that the CDC has given their recommendation, but the CDC isn't our classrooms. They don't see 35 kids in a class. They don't see the hallways jam-packed to the point where you cannot pass. I also understand enrollment will be down, but that will never be for every class. My sophomore could have 12 in his first hour and 37 in his second hour. And what happens when our teachers get ill? Because they will get ill. There aren't enough people to substitute in a regular year. Add in COVID, and the numbers will be less. Our healthcare system is not accessible enough to know that if a child is feeling sick and their parents cannot go to the doctors, that they won't just come to school. This is a systematic issue, but it's an issue that you must consider when deciding to send them back. Kids come to school sick all of the time under normal circumstances. This will not change. It is difficult for people to take a step back from the idea of, I have to keep my job, I need to make money, it's not fair to me. It is really clouding a lot of people's vision of the big picture, which is if one administrator, one teacher, one child dies, then sending Southgate back to the classroom would have been a mistake. So then the question becomes, how many deaths is an acceptable number to live with? I do not envy your choices, but your choices are what we will live with. In our life now, every decision that we make is a risk-benefit analysis. I hope that you will choose to start Southgate virtually, using our teachers, and revisit the idea of a safe return to school at a later date, because right now the risk far outweighs the benefit. End of comment. Next comment from Dina Barrios. This cannot be an easy situation for any family, and there is no way to please everyone, no way to please even a majority. While I may understand the decision for remote learning this fall, I do not agree with it, and I feel that students will be left to fend for themselves in regards to their learning and development. The learning my child does matters. It matters to us, and it matters to his future. Number one, what is being done to ensure every teacher is providing students with the classwork/homework/expectations in an organized and unified manner for both receiving and returning assignments? The spring was a mess with each teacher doing things differently. Number two, what resources are being provided to teachers to ensure they can provide students with engaging learning strategies and discussions that will keep them excited to return to these online platforms for learning? Are these strategies required or just encouraged? Number three, will there still be transition support and resources for those entering either middle or high school? End of comment.
The next comment is from Adriana Carpenter. I fully understand that attendance is required for the online live sessions. My issue is both my husband and I work full-time like many other parents in the district. If my kindergartner cannot attend every single live session because we aren't home to do it with her, and daycare facilities won't help with this, but we fully intend to watch sessions in every evening and to do the assigned work and turn it in. Will she be failed based on attendance? If that's the case, we will need to look at other school districts. Atlas is not a good fit educationally for our family. Mrs. Pasture mentioned Latchkey was licensed as a daycare and possibly opening up when I spoke with her last week. Is this still an option for families? And if so, how do we go about signing up? And will teachers there help our children sign in to live lessons? End of comment. The next comment is from William Augustine. At what cost do we not send our kids back into the classroom. Social interaction and relationships are very important to the development of children and young adults. Isolation, long-term lack of motivation, decreased ability to learn, depression, and other cognitive impairments are real risks posed by continuing to keep kids out of the classroom. Other local schools and districts have opted for in-person, face-to-face openings with a hybrid approach at a minimum. The fear-based approach being contemplated by the Southgate district will continue to put our children at a disadvantage, as I have heard no plans as to when it ends and what conditions allow our kids to be back in school. At a minimum, give parents and kids the option to decide if they want to attend school in person or remotely. End of comment. Next comment is from Nicole Hales. I would like to thank the board members and Jill for their countless hours they dedicated to the district at this extremely difficult time. Also to our Southgate teachers that have put in several hours as well to ensure we have a plan for the students, as I know we are likely to be shut down by the state eventually. My sincere thank you to the teachers that made the pandemic easier for my children with just a Zoom class, a call, or even email. It was so very important to them to receive interactions during the difficult time. I did attend the last board meeting, and with that being said, I had sent a letter to the board with my concerns and disappointments with the board's decision not to let each family choose what is best for their own child. As I know it is not ideal for some students to go back, and yet not ideal for some to go remote. This could be an ongoing argument with many, so will just leave that there. I feel had the board given the families the choice to choose what is best for their own family would have been the best option. Along with that, I have asked questions regarding the remote learning, as I need to decide what is best for my family now that the district has taken my choice to choose away from me. I have yet to get a response, so I decided to submit my question here. How long do you plan to do remote learning? Is it going to be for the whole year? If you have more than one student in the household, will they each get a Chromebook? If the computers do not come in, how will the district choose what students will receive a Chromebook? If the parents work from home and has 3 students at the same time, it can and has caused difficulty in the past with internet. How will this affect the students when it is mandatory for students to be on for attendance? To whom do we address when a teacher does not respond to a student's email for questions and help? End of comment.
Okay, the next comment is from Rod Burkhart. Board, last week our thoughts as parents from the survey provided us was delivered to the board, and a vast majority, 60% plus, wanted a hybrid plan, and without consideration, the board choose another direction. We as parents in this district with children at actual Southgate community schools, not other schools located in the city, our opinions deserves consideration and respect. We should be heard and given the same respect you demand from us, not dictated to us with a plan of at-home learning that requires more work from parents, are already employed full-time and now having to be home educators as well. End comment. Next comment is from Safa Saidi. Hello, good afternoon. Firstly, I would like to thank you for all the hard work that you do. I will speak for my children and I and how to protect my family and my community that I live in. If the children go back to school, it will be a complete disaster, being that many children are asymptomatic and will bring the virus to the grandparents and older community members. There are also many children in our district that have high-risk family members and parents, being from age or health conditions, or the child themselves is in high-risk category. Even after someone has recovered from COVID-19, a new study has shown that cases of people with COVID-19 have heart problems or other health issues even after recovering. Last but not least, if the school's open or not, I will not risk my children, my family, and my parents by them going to school. Also, studies have shown that an average person touches their face 23 times an hour. Imagine telling a child that they cannot touch their face all day. Also, I would like to thank the Southgate District and their staff for all your hard work. End of this comment. Next comment is from Katrina Sanchez. I know the district on how to begin our 2021 school year is a difficult one. I know the decision on how to begin our 2021 school year is a difficult one. When given the choice between face-to-face and Atlas online schooling, my choice was to go with Atlas. In my opinion, a much better option would be for virtual learning with our own Southgate teachers who specialize in the area they teach. Like many other parents, I would love to have face-to-face learning, but not at the expense of my children's safety, my family's safety, or the safety of teachers and staff. Children, no doubt, thrive in an environment where they are able to interact on a more personal level with their teachers and schoolmates. But that is not an option we have, no matter how school begins. Normal as we knew it will not exist until this virus has a vaccine and the spread of it halts. As the parents of a soon-to-be 6th and 8th grader, I've been very active in the school and volunteered for everything I could. I've seen how it would be nearly impossible to have face-to-face learning and still keep everyone safe. We don't have enough lockers for each kid to have their own lockers, so the kids would need to carry their backpacks around all day. How do we limit the spread of germs on a backpack that travels throughout the school and then home? I've seen kids borrow each other's pencils, calculator, highlighter, etc. There are too many variables that even constant cleaning can't overcome. I've seen teachers beg parents for basic cleaning supplies like Clorox wipes, and that was when they could even be located in the store. Now I have a hard time even finding those items for my own home. How can we expect these teachers to provide quality educational material while trying to maintain cleanliness and distance in the classroom? There are just too many ways that face-to-face can go wrong and force us to take a step back in the fight against the virus. There is no answer that will make everyone happy, but there is one that will make us all safer, and that is virtual learning. We need to protect our children. We need to protect our families, and we need to protect our staff. Thank you for allowing my opinion to be heard. End comment.
The next comment is from Elizabeth Altizer. I am commenting today to reiterate my support for students starting the 2021 school year remotely. This format will allow students to foster connections with our Southgate teachers they know and will be taught using our Southgate curriculum. Remote and virtual learning is the only way to ensure the safety of students, staff, and families during this time. I am concerned that if students, teachers, and staff were to start the year off face-to-face, even following the many requirements and recommendations in the state roadmap for back to school, there would be significant health risk. There has not been enough time to study transmission and spread of COVID-19 in the unique school environment. While data can be touted regarding children and transmission rates with models and projections, the truth is our current information is lacking. This situation is developing and changing daily with improved recommendations as scientific study continues and evolves. Many who support face-to-face learning talk about nurses and doctors having to work or other professions that have been deemed essential not having a choice. Teachers are not trained as health professionals, nor are they equipped with the same protections/work environments. Our buildings lack proper ventilation, air conditioning, space to social distance appropriately, and so much more for in-person instruction to be safe. Starting the year in a remote and virtual format lends itself to an easy transition back to face-to-face instruction when it is safe to do so. Thank you for your time. The next comment comes from Carrie Bedard. Dear school board members, as a Southgate graduate, former Southgate teacher, and parent of 5 children in the district, we believe virtual teaching via Southgate teachers is the best way to begin the school year. We have an immune-compromised child and can't risk sending any of our children for face-to-face learning. There are too many exposures with 2 children at the elementary level, 1 at the middle school, and 2 at the high school. We are very pleased with the option to have Southgate teachers teach students virtually because we have used and not had good experience with Atlas in the past. With the uncertainty of this virus, virtual learning provides safety and consistency to students, staff, and parents. We feel that having Southgate teachers teach students virtually is the next best thing to face-to-face learning and the perfect option for our family. Thank you again, Carrie and Robert Bedard. The next comment comes from Kevin Anderson. My name is Kevin Anderson. I am a registered nurse and have worked in healthcare for 20 years. It is my opinion that the safest way to open school this season is to do so with a full virtual option with the Southgate teachers leading the instruction. We are now seeing evidence in other states that in-person class is going to lead to further COVID outbreaks. I want to thank you for offering this option. It was a huge relief for me and my family from a safety standpoint and for maintaining some quality instruction. We were looking for other teacher-led virtual options before this became available for us in Southgate. So thank you.
And this is Jason Martin one more time with the final 2 submitted comments. The next comment comes from Jennifer Owens. It says, my husband and I have 2 children in the district, and we wanted to let you know that you have our full support in your decision to go with remote learning with our Southgate teachers. We understand that this decision was not an easy one, but we feel that this is the safest option. We know that you have gotten a lot of bad feedback since the last meeting, but there are many families that are counting on you to stick to your decision and let us start to move forward with the plan you voted on. Thank you for your time. End of comment. The final submitted comment this evening comes from Amy Berner. It says, according to Wayne County Health Department, Wayne County, in parentheses excluding Detroit, had a total of 104 yesterday compared to 407 cases on March 25th, 2020. Wayne County is in phase 4 of the Michigan Safe Start, which according to the Michigan Safe Schools Roadmap, puts our children in-person learning. With appropriate safety measures in place, our children and teachers would be safe. Each parent has to weigh the risks versus benefits, in parentheses, health, education, psychosocial, social well-being, etc., for their own children. For those of us parents that have weighted these risks versus benefits and feel that the benefit of in-person learning outweighs the potential risk of health concerns, we should be given that option to send our children to school. I am a nurse and am well aware of coronavirus and its effects on health. I cared for our most vulnerable population, in parentheses, in a nursing home during the heart of the pandemic. Safety measures I put in place were able to keep my residents safe during this time. I'm not blind to its effects, but wholeheartedly feel both teachers and students would be safe with appropriate safety precautions, and the benefit of in-person education outweighs the risks, period. End of comment. Those are all of the comments that were submitted this evening.
Thank you so much to the parents that submitted those comments, and thank you so much to the administrators that read those for us. We will move on now to item F, presentations. This is a presentation from the Southgate Community School District COVID-19 Preparedness and Response, the COLT team, the Continuation of Learning team, and who will be delivering that presentation this evening? Dr. Baker Herring.
So I will remind you that our COLT leadership team consists of the very people who agreed to read this evening. So Mr. Jason Martin, Ms. Renee Chilson, Mr. Andrew Himmick, Ms. Wendy Nowak, and Dr. Baker Herring. So we have been meeting at 7:15 in the morning to prepare this presentation for you, but I don't want to be remiss and forget the entire COLT team for their contribution to this presentation. So Dr. Baker Herring.
Sorry, I'm trying to manage a couple devices here, and I couldn't unmute when I had the presentation up. All right, so we really wanted to start with giving you an overview of kind of how we, what the process that we took in getting here in our plan. So the return to school roadmap obviously was Governor Whitmer's plan to open schools back up based on her meeting with her advisory council. And this is aligned to the 6-phase Michigan Safe Start plan. So the roadmap addresses phases 1 through 3, where face-to-face instruction is prohibited. And phase 4, face-to-face instruction is permitted with some strict safety protocols. Phase 5, face-to-face instruction is in place with some slightly relaxed safety protocols. And then phase 6 safety protocols are no longer required. Districts received this roadmap on June 30th, and we were required to develop a plan that addresses phases 1 through 3, phase 4, and phase 5. And these must be approved by the Board of Education by August 15th. School districts then received a template to assist us in creating our preparedness and response plan. And we received the template on July 9th. And so we have actually been meeting with our COLT team since May 13th. And while it's evolved a few different times, we've had some subcommittees kind of come out of that group. There's actually currently 63 people serving on this committee, and they've been meeting weekly to help us assist with the planning. One of the subcommittees that came out of this group was a mental and social emotional wellness subcommittee, and they've been actually meeting separately from the COLT team. And their part of the plan actually is addressed in phases 1 through 3, as well as our plan for phases 4 and 5 component. The technology subcommittee, we started actually, I think that was a very early on group that was together. And this is where the recommendation came from to purchase Schoology as a learning management system for Southgate. And we learned in spring very quickly that parents as well as staff felt it was very challenging to manage all of the different ways that we were using our technology tools and communication methods. And it was a wide variety across the district, K-12. And so it was very clear that we needed to be much more consistent if we had a remote learning plan. And Schoology really did provide us with the consistency for that. A couple, I just want to highlight a little bit about Schoology for those people that are unsure of what an actual learning management system is for our staff. And that it's a repository. It's an opportunity where staff get to create and add their Southgate content that they've used in the past and create assignments and assessments, and they build that into their courses within Schoology. Also, it's a collaboration and a communication tool. So we can use it district-wide, from the superintendent to building administrators, teachers to parents and staff. There's discussion boards. There's also ways that students can meet with their teachers virtually, just like we are here. There's data collection components for grading. There's a gradebook piece that's included in Schoology and allows us to track student progress on the priority standards that we have in Southgate, as well as integration of the apps that we use a lot of, use frequently. There are many that are linked directly to Schoology. So students can really, students and families can really use Schoology as a one-stop shop for all teaching and learning components. We're really excited. We have a lot of learning going on around this. We actually had a full day of our Schoology trainers working with many of our staff. There was a few different sessions where we had almost 100 staff that were logged in today for their training, optional training on summer break. So it was pretty impressive. And then finally, our technology, the purchase that we made was in May, an additional 875 Chromebooks, which we anticipate being delivered on August 31st. And this final purchase of Chromebooks does ensure that Southgate Community School District is a one-to-one district, which means that every student that attends Southgate will be issued a district device this fall.
All right, so I was a member of the mental and social emotional wellness team, and as a result of that team, we are doing mental health screeners for all students. We do have two different versions. We have a young 5s through 5th grade version and a 6 through 12 version, and the young 5s, kindergarten and 1st grade, will actually be completed by parents. This will be done 3 times a year, so right in September, January, and June, and as well, we'll also be doing weekly wellness check-ins with our students. This is a required piece of the roadmap as well. We, based on the screening results, there's a rapid response referral form that will be submitted to the building social worker and/or counselor, depending on the building. There's professional development wrapped in that includes social and emotional learning lessons for whether you're in person and remote. The leadership team is attending a trauma-informed leadership program through Wayne Risa, and there's going to be dedicated time during staff meetings throughout the year to make sure that we focus on the mental and social wellness, both of students and staff. There's going to be lots of communication, Schoology, as you just heard from Dr. Baker-Herring. There's going to be website information that includes teen wellness, newsletters, COVID and anxiety, conflict resolution, decision-making, and the social workers are doing regular newsletters.
This is Renee Chilson again. As was previously shared, the governor's executive order requires all Michigan districts to develop a preparedness plan for the required phases of the Michigan Safe Start Plan. The district is pending a final decision by the Board of Education on our complete plan. This portion of the presentation will address the required components for face-to-face instruction during phases 4 and 5, and the following are the required components. So we have the PPE or personal protective equipment, hygiene, cleaning, athletics, screening, testing, and transportation. And we're going to go into those a little bit deeper. So for the PPE, all staff and students will wear a face mask while on the school bus or in a school building, in hallways and common areas, except during meals, unless the face covering cannot be medically tolerated and there is going to be medical documentation required from a professional. Students with significant disabilities preventing the use of facial coverings are referred to forthcoming guidance from MDE. Building, grounds, and transportation signage will be prominent throughout the school facilities to remind students and staff to wear facial coverings. Disposable or fabric face coverings will be provided to students and staff as needed. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Hygiene. Each classroom will have hygiene protocols, which will be taught with timelines that are posted and communicated to students and parents. Each classroom and main office will also be supplied with hand sanitizer. Supplies such as paper towel, soap, hand sanitizer, tissues, trash receptacles will be checked daily and restocked. Students and teachers must have scheduled hand washing with soap and water every 2 to 3 hours where feasible. And where we can't, we will schedule hand sanitizer use.
The next component would be the cleaning component. Dan Bird sent us their plan for phase 4 and 5. And within that, there would be training on cleaning materials and protocols, which would be provided to the staff. Cleaning stations with job cards would be identified around the building that hold materials for usage in different areas of each building. Frequently touched surfaces, including light switch, doors, benches, bathrooms, must undergo cleaning at least every 4 hours with an EPA-approved disinfectant. All frequently used materials and equipment will be wiped down after each class with EPA-approved disinfectant, and playground equipment would be cleaned twice a week. The next slide is a job card, which is attached to every custodial cart for easy reference on cleaning procedures. Each job card will highlight the enhanced daily cleaning and disinfecting process. This guide will help the staff to visualize what needs to be completed in each office or classroom on a daily basis, focusing heavily on disinfecting. The next component would be athletics. Southgate Community School District will follow the most current MHSAA guideline for phases 4 and 5, and guidance for the phases will be differentiated between, and it's found on the MHSAA website. Currently, the most recent update was on July 29th, stating that fall sports, there would be approved to be a phase-in approach to fall sports. Also, the elimination of scrimmages for all fall sports. New competition limits would be approved. The concept is that fall competitions will take place locally. This would regard there be no large-scale events, invitationals, or tournaments. Also, the MHSA broke the sports down into risk factors, and they allowed low-risk sports to begin practice and competitions as scheduled on August 12th, which is tomorrow. And the competitions would include golf, tennis, cross-country, and swimming. Swimming can begin indoor practice and competition once the pools are open, with capacity limitations being followed. And allowing moderately risk sports such as soccer and volleyball to begin practicing as scheduled on August 12th, but to delay competitions. And the decision on competition timelines would be made on or by August 20th. And then finally, there'd be a delay in the start of football practice with full player pads and equipment until Monday, August 17th. And again, the competition timelines would be made on or by August 20th. And again, the MHSAA will continue to be nimble and flexible in these uncertain times, similar to our plan.
So the last three aspects of the phase 4 and phase 5 plan starts with screening, and the next item is testing. They're very similar. When we talk about screening, it really does, as it says here, starts at home for families and staff. The form off to the right, which is hard to read, comes from the Wayne County Health Department. And some of you may have seen this in your place of employment or if you've entered other locations, but it asks a small battery of questions such as just simply yes or no. Have you had a fever, such as the temperature greater than 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit? A new or worsening cough, yes or no. Shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, yes or no. Runny nose and or congestion, body aches and or tiredness, vomiting and or diarrhea, and new loss of smell or taste. If the answer to any of those questions is yes to any one of those questions, then parents should keep their children home for the day and consult the primary care physician. If it was a staff member, which follows a very similar form, this one happens to be for the families, they should not be in the situation of being face-to-face in the school building. They should also stay home. It also jumps down to the middle section of the form. It says, have you had or your child had close contact with anyone who had a positive COVID-19 diagnostic test in the past 14 days, yes or no? Or have you or your child traveled out of the U.S. in the last 14 days, yes or no? If the answer to either of these questions is yes, you and your child must stay home to quarantine for 14 days since last contact or return to the U.S. So when we look at screening, again, we say it starts at home because it really does. We need to make sure that parents are sending their kids fever-free without medications and so on to help break that fever, and that all symptomatic students or staff should stay home. So that's our screening piece that takes us into our testing, which is about COVID-19 testing. So testing, we've pulled a few bullet points here. Basically what it comes down to is symptomatic students and staff sent home. So let's say they make it to the school that day and we're now sending them home from school, should be kept home until they have tested negative for COVID-19 or have been released from isolation according to the CDC guidelines. Those guidelines continue to evolve and they change slightly. So again, there is a link here. I know this presentation is going to be posted online. So if there's ever a look there, if not a search for CDC guidelines, I'm sure many of you have looked at those. In the event of a lab or clinically diagnosed case of COVID-19, immediate efforts should be made to contact any close contacts, those who spent more than 15 minutes or less than 6 feet in close proximity to the student or staff member. So we have to identify who that student was around if that was to happen in the building when and if we return to face-to-face. That way they can be quarantined for 14 days at home. Students and staff should be closely monitored for any symptoms of COVID-19. At this time, empiric testing of all students or staff members in the class is not recommended. Only those that develop symptoms require testing for COVID-19. So just to expand on that just slightly, if there were a case, we were back in school, whenever that's the date's chosen, and a student were to unfortunately test positive or feel the symptoms coming on of COVID-19, we would not test the whole class. Basically, it comes down to just testing the kids that would start showing symptoms. And then our next piece is to, of course, after notifying parents and so on, to go through a procedure on how to get their children picked up or their child picked up. We would then notify local health officials, staff, and students immediately of any possible case of COVID-19 while maintaining confidentiality. Our goal would be to let all parents know that, hey, at such and such school, classroom, whatever. But again, we have to maintain confidentiality in the testing procedures and so on. So moving on to the last and final piece of the phases 4 and 5 plan is transportation. And while Southgate does not provide transportation for all of our students, there are transportation services for our special education students, some of our athletic teams, as well as the Beacon Day Treatment Center that has 22 districts feeding into our Beacon Day Treatment Center in our old Garrish Middle School building. So with that said, Dean Transportation, similar to DM Burr, our contracted transportation company, has provided us a protocol plan for phases 4 and 5. And just very simply, the plan talks about the availability and use of hand sanitizer on the buses upon boarding the bus, facial coverings, employees that are on the bus, whether it's aides or bus drivers, having facial coverings, face shields, disposable gloves, safety glasses. It talked about their cleaning procedures. If there's a level 1 cleaning is just preventative, level 2 is preventative and full disinfection of the complete passenger compartment, or a level 3 cleaning is specialized if and after there was a confirmed COVID-19 case. There's also other items that talks about if a student were to exhibit symptoms while on the bus. Some of our bus rides are very short, but others may be a little bit longer time frame. There's protocols in place from the Dean plan to cover that, as well as their employee training and daily health screening. Also, it includes vehicle air circulation and ventilation. While the buses don't have a lot of options for ventilation, it's recommended throughout the roadmap that windows be put down to allow the circulation to go throughout the bus. Obviously, come wintertime, it'd be difficult, but ideally some circulation throughout that bus would be ideal. And then the last pieces of the Dean plan talk about physical distancing, social distancing, and then Dean's commitment to students to just disinfect, protect them, and monitor the entire situation. So from the standpoint of Dean, their plan covers the basis for phases 4 and 5. But then for the Beacon Day Treatment Center from those 22 districts, we are collecting the plant transportation safety protocols from each one of those districts, which are spelled out in the roadmap. So they will be very similar to Dean's plan. However, we need to be aware of all 22 districts, which we will collect through Beacon Day treatment. And that is the final piece of the phases 4 and 5 face-to-face plan when that does get put into place down the road. And that's part of our roadmap to present all these phases, as Dr. Baker Herring alluded to earlier. Thank you.
Okay, so the next component is addressing phases 1 through 3. So in phases 1 through 3, we are required to have a remote learning piece, and which we'll describe here, but this also addresses the direction that we got from the Board of Education when we received last Monday, August 3rd. So one thing we wanted to do is clarify the differences in the plans, the emergency plan that we created in the spring, compared to the current plan that we have moving forward for remote or distance learning for the fall. So in the spring, it's definitely referred to as emergency or crisis teaching and learning. It was a very much a crisis-based plan developed to react quickly. We utilized supplemental curriculum, and we did not provide students with new instruction. And our grading practices were very much caring for students who were adjusting to this crisis. We had minimal live instruction requirements due to lack of devices. And our virtual office hours that we had with teachers were random. We didn't necessarily have a set schedule for that. Attendance was taken asynchronously. They did not have to be present on a live session to be counted as present for that time during the closure. We provided teachers with emergency professional learning. There was not much plan to it. We were, scrambling to put things together. And again, we mentioned it before, there was a medley of online technology tools and communication methods. I mean, we used whatever we had, and there was just a very wide variety. And there were irregular due dates of times for submitting tasks. There were not regular, consistent opportunities for assignments, as well as when things were due. So it's very different looking at the fall. And so, as you can see on the screen, it's a very proactive plan. We are aligning our remote learning plan to our Southgate teacher-paced content. New learning will be provided to our students, and students will be graded on that content based on the mastery of district priority standards and learning targets from that curriculum that we use in Southgate. There will be live instruction that's delivered by our staff. There will be structured school days based on different building and grade level schedules. There will be synchronous attendance that's required. Students are required to be in attendance at the time that their class is being presented on a live session. There's planned professional learning for staff based on their requests and needs having to do with Schoology and a variety of other topics throughout the school year. Schoology will also be used again across grade levels to deliver content and communicate virtually and electronically, again, to try to be very consistent for all families and staff and just across the district. And there will be consistent dates and times for submission of tasks and assignments. You will get that in a weekly schedule that you will receive for each student. So one of the things we want to do is kind of clarify. There's a lot of new terminology that we, are hearing a lot about, and some of the terminology is used interchangeably, and we really wanted to kind of clarify that for you. When we talk about remote or distance learning, we're talking about that instruction from our Southgate teachers with our Southgate content. And we talk about online or virtual learning, we're talking about our Southgate teachers that are acting as facilitators or mentors with the Odysseyware and Florida virtual platforms. So two very, very different pieces to the remote learning plan. So specifically our remote or distance learning with our Southgate teachers, it's teacher-paced. Teachers will set the pace for students each week. It's going to be during the school day. During the regular school hours, students will connect with those teachers. There will be live synchronous lessons during the school day, and there will also be asynchronous, which is student-paced lessons or content that they may be required to do at different times when they're not live with the class or a small group. Attendance will be taken at each session. Students will be required to be in attendance for those live sessions. Teachers will have to complete weekly mentor logs that will be a two-way communication documentation that we use for pupil accounting measures for documentation for FTE purposes. It will be a standards-aligned curriculum delivered through Schoology, and elementary students will also have packets for independent practice, as we know they're going to need that pen to paper practice, not just on the computer screen. Common grade levels and courses will deliver the same content each week. And again, we talked about grades and credit, and whether or not a student is promoted or retained in a grade level will be determined by the evidence of mastery of the priority standards. And we will also be administering NWA map growth remotely. NWA has set this up over the last, obviously during the closure, for how schools and districts can use these screening and diagnostic tests in a remote environment. So that is our intent to do that and required in the roadmap. So one of the things we kind of want to just touch on a little bit is about the instructional day and how it looks in a face-to-face environment and how that compares to what it looks like in a remote learning environment. And that it definitely can, both remote and face-to-face strategies can be utilized in both environments. So when we talk about this instructional day, it's really a model of the gradual release of responsibility, really shifting the lesson from a teacher-led perspective to a student-led perspective. So when we talk about the teacher-led component, it's that explicit instruction. It's the I do, the teacher being the I. So it's in a face-to-face environment, you might see it as a direct instruction, demonstrations, modeling, which you can still do in a synchronous live lesson, in a environment like we have here. But it's also oftentimes a better use of time to use that asynchronous component of online instruction for that, meaning you could video yourself giving that direct instruction. And then the demo or the modeling, you're videoing yourself where students could watch it at a different time during the day and bring their questions that they may have from that lesson, they bring it to their next live session. So that's how it can look in a remote learning environment as well. And then guided instruction, which is kind of a we do it together, the teacher and the whole class. And then the collaborative piece, which is also, again, it's a collaborative component with the students, which can often be small group instruction or teams or pods where they do it together. So this is where the synchronous online instruction really increases student engagement and really involvement in the content and the learning in a remote environment. So what we look at oftentimes in a face-to-face setting where the teacher is using guided instruction and collaborative work, where we would see discussions or stations or centers or think alouds and number talks and whiteboard responses. We could replicate that in an online remote environment, and that looks similar in that we could use breakout rooms for our small group instruction, video conferencing, polling devices. There's some escape room games, fun stuff that kids can do to connect with one another, but also some formative assessment strategies that we can do when students are in this remote learning environment. And then finally, the independent piece of this model. In a face-to-face environment, you might see it as classwork or homework. That's kind of where that falls into this independent practice. So in a remote learning environment, it's where the students are doing it alone. And so it can be very asynchronous. So it's not time where you're spent face-to-face with your students. You'd provide them that independent practice, and they could do it at any time, after in the evening or whenever whenever it works out best for them and the family. But also it could be online practice like Khan Academy. So many of our best instructional strategies that we use face-to-face can be replicated in the online environment, in the remote learning environment. Okay, so one of the things we also wanted to be sure that was clear is that remote learning expectations for time on task looks very different than it does in a face-to-face classroom. We don't just replicate the same number of hours that you spend with the teacher in front of a computer. So this is a recommended learning recommendations for the amount of time that students should spend in front of a screen. So it's based on different grade levels or grade bands, and you can see here it's pre-K, the minimum and maximum time that students should be in front of a screen, 20 to 60 minutes per day. And then grades 3 through 5, you can see it's 60 minutes per day is the minimum, to 120 minutes per day is the maximum. Obviously, over the course of a school day, it could be broken up into different sections of time for large group and small group instruction, but also it might be broken in between asynchronous activities. So you might have something, you might begin with a literacy lesson and students might have to do some type of literacy work after that. And then they would do that asynchronously at their own time. And then there might be another time where they get back together in a whole group instruction for mathematics. And then they would have another asynchronous activity to do after that. So this is a sample schedule for a teacher in elementary. This is very generic in that it's going to look different based on each building, grade level, and teacher. But this is an outline of what the time might break down for an elementary teacher. The goal is that each teacher would send out a schedule, a weekly schedule that would have each times that students would be meeting for synchronous live instruction, but also they would have their asynchronous lessons included in there as well. And these would be made available to families on a weekly basis. These are the remote learning recommendations for students in middle school, grades 6 through 8. So each day, a minimum of 90 minutes, maximum of 180 minutes of time on screen and live sessions. That does not include the time they would spend with asynchronous work, whether it be independent practice or some pre-learning prior to their live instruction. This is a sample of a middle school teacher's daily schedule. And again, same idea. We would intend that teachers would send this out weekly so that families and students know the expectations for meeting times, for live sessions, as well as all of their asynchronous work. And this is grade 9 through 12. Remote learning recommendations, a minimum of 120 minutes a day, maximum of 210 minutes a day. And the same scenario for our high school teachers' schedule. They would send that out weekly to students, so students would see what their assignments are for the week, as well as when they are to be in attendance for live instruction. And this is our Asher High School's student schedule, or teacher schedule, pardon me. Very much similar to the Anderson High School teacher schedule. They have a difference in their contract for Fridays, but that's noted there. So the other option that is available to our students in the fall is our online learning option, which is managed through the Atlas program. And again, as I mentioned before, it's Southgate teachers, and they act as facilitators and mentors. And this program is completely self-paced. There are no live sessions, as we talked about the synchronous lessons that we have in our remote learning scenario. There are not those in this program, which means students are able to access courses at any time, day or night. Again, they're all asynchronous, so it's self-paced. Students are able to work at their own pace at any time of the day. Weekly mentor logs are still required to be completed by each teacher to document that two-way communication for pupil accounting purposes. This Atlas program utilizes a standards-aligned curriculum that's delivered through the OdysseyWare platform and now the Florida Virtual School platform that is available for students K-12. We will also be administering the NWA MAP growth assessments to our online students. So we have that information should they choose to go back to a face-to-face setting down the road. With our Atlas program, there are weekly meetups that are required for all of our students. In the past, we did that always in person, where students would have options for timeframes to meet with those Atlas teachers in person. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that, and we've done it virtually online, and it's worked out very well. Students taking assessments in grades K-8, and then all students with final exams that are in grades 6 through 12. Those are, in the past, they've been taken in person. We haven't been able to do that, but we've done that over the closure and in the summer virtually, where students are logged into the assessment and they would either FaceTime or be live on their, another device where they would take the assessment at that time. We utilize sequential learning for grades 6 through 12, which means students take 2 classes at a time for 6 weeks. So that every 6 weeks they take 2 more classes, so that at the end of the semester they have completed 6 classes, just as a student would in a face-to-face setting for a semester. And then students are able to move to Atlas at any time during the school year. What we are asking is that if families know that they're not comfortable sending a student back face-to-face, if by chance we end up sending students back face-to-face in November after we reevaluate in October, if a family's not comfortable with the safety protocols due to health concerns, or if a student is not willing to follow those strict safety protocols, or maybe they're not able to meet the live synchronous meetings during the school day, we are asking that families would consider Atlas at this time for fall, and try to commit to that for the semester. That would really help us with planning and staffing accordingly. Obviously, we know that if things change, we're flexible, and we will definitely be flexible for our families. But if at all possible, we're hoping that families would consider making that option, selecting that option now so that we can plan accordingly. And it's our plan that the superintendent is going to send out an updated learning options for the fall of 2020 for parents to select either the remote learning option with our Southgate teachers or the Atlas online learning option with what was just described, and then make their commitment no later than August 19th. I think this is you, Miss Pastor. You're muted.
I apologize. Food distribution will take place weekly. Right now, there are no federal allowances for us to do 7 meals in 7 days like we did in the spring. So the number of breakfast and lunches will be based on the number of school calendar days. So for example, the first week of school is 2.5 days. So for example, we could provide 2 lunches and 3 breakfasts for that first week of school. So we have to follow the calendar days unless the federal guidelines come in that allow us to make any changes to that. So the Southgate Community School District will begin the 2021 school year remotely for all students and will evaluate October 13th of 2020 unless otherwise directed by a governmental agency, with a possible date of returning face-to-face on November the 9th, 2020. The district will follow the remote learning plan for phases 1 to 3. There's a link to the plan there. If necessary, on-site testing, screening of students may occur. Learning labs may be available as needed and designed by each building. Learning labs will be utilized for assessment purposes and to work with students on goals as determined by the student's IEPT and the MTSS teams. And so that stands for the Individualized Educational Plan Team and the Multi-Tiered System of Support Teams. Proper social distancing, screening, and cleaning protocols will be followed. In order to maintain proper social distancing, the labs will be open by appointment only. Please keep in mind that this entire plan is designed to be flexible and nimble. So for example, as new guidelines are released, we would need to change our plan to follow all and or strongly recommended guidelines. So we know, for example, that the governor recently decided that child care facilities are not going to require facial coverings for some students. If we were in that position, we would need to change. That's the end of our presentation, and we are open for questions if you have any.
Thank you very much for that presentation. As Mr. Green pointed out, the agenda was adjusted for continuity. So we'll call on board members now at this time who wish to speak, make comment, ask questions in regards to the presentation and preparedness response plan. If you have questions, just let me know. But I think I intended on starting at the bottom here, so I'm going to start with Mr. Sage. If you don't have a question or a comment, you can just tell me that you'd like me to skip you or come back to you or whatever you wish. But Mr. Sage, did you wish to speak now?
All right, buddy. First and foremost, thanks for picking me first. That makes me feel pretty good. So you put it on me. So thank you. Thank you to all the parents listening. Obviously, the kids' safety is number one in everybody's hearts and everybody's minds. There's a number of factors that go into the decision process, and obviously safety is one. The emotional aspect is another one. The interaction with other kids, knowing if kids are going to be safe when we don't have face-to-face interaction. All these thoughts go into my mind. And there's no easy decision. There's no bulletproof plan. Whether you're at a school, whether you're at a work, at my work, a church, the casino now that you can go into, anything can happen. There's no bulletproof plan. So we have to minimize the risk to the best of our ability. And I struggle with this because, yes, somebody had commented on the comments, and it was a great comment that one death is too many. And you are 110% correct. But one death is too many with suicide, depression, all these factors that go involved. So I guess one question that I do have for the team is, we're going from roughly 6.5 hours, if I take out lunch in this, to an hour and a half at maximum for some of the learning for these kids. So they might get on the computer in the morning, and I know there's other factors as far as them doing the work on their own, but the face-to-face interaction, being in front of a teacher, the teacher supervising the lesson. So is that a fair statement that we're going from roughly 6.5 hours down to an hour and a half of instruction per se, at hour and a half at a max?
I guess what I want to highlight is the fact that we are saying, and when I've done a lot of research since the closure, because I'm not an expert on remote learning by any means, but I have attended a few different courses, and I'm in the middle of a few different books, and definitely the message that's shared across the board is that asynchronous learning does take place. While it's not in front of a teacher live, it's still considered students are learning and growing, and they're thinking and they're working through that content, and then they're hopefully bringing those questions back to have a rich discussion with their classmates and their teacher in that live discussion. So I know it looks as if that there's not the same amount of time, but there is time that's not documented in the school day, because it might be in the evening, or it might be before school started, or it might be before their live session started. But that is the best practices of a remote learning school or a cyber school. And I can only share that from, like I said, I've just done the research over the closure and summer.
Right. And, again, first and foremost, I want to thank the Colt team, you, Michelle, Jill, everybody, the board members, everybody that's involved in this, everybody on this meeting, and all the parents. There is no easy decision. There's no bulletproof plan. And that's the same, like I say, at my work. And we've got to make the hard decisions. And regardless of what my opinion is, it's a collective decision of the board, and I support whatever that decision is. But, looking at the survey initially that went out, and I know there were some different things that changed on it, we had more of a percentage that wanted to go in school as opposed to remote. Looking at the statistics from the emails that came in today, that has kind of swayed a little bit. Now, it could be just from the people that responded, but it's swayed more so where it's to remote learning. So I guess the question is, if that were the case, and that's the decision of everybody, the board and teachers, so on and so forth, what are the checks and balances of these teachers listen, I think the teachers are amazing. So let me say that, number one. Number two, I'm friends with a ton of them. But for my kids, for the students of Southgate, what are the checks and balances of the teachers in the event, a student has to be online at a certain time and do this. What about the teachers? What happens in the event that the teacher's not there for the lesson per se?
So I have crafted an email to staff tomorrow that lets them know that it is mandatory for them to be responsive to whether it's email request or a request for extra help in a timely manner. The administrators will be collecting each teacher's weekly plan. They will be logging on, the administrators will be logging on and checking to make sure. Every parent that has contacted me in regards to being concerned about the teachers and being accountable, I have encouraged them to reach out the first time that a teacher does not respond. I have encouraged them to reach out to their administrator and or myself immediately to make sure that.
Lost you, Jill.
Can you hear me?
I can now. I missed part of that comment though.
So I just encourage parents to reach out the first time that a staff member isn't responsive, the first time a staff member isn't on a live session. If a staff member does need to be absent, they should be letting us know so that we can get a sub and those things. And in that case, you might find out that, we have a substitute, but we would expect them to be there for the live sessions, as it's not an option as it may have been deemed an option for some in the spring.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, there's a million questions that I could be on here myself for an hour and a half, and I don't want to do that to everybody. I know each board member has their own thing that they need to go over. I've taken a million notes here. Obviously, as I've said, and you guys have all said, safety is number one. There's no question. Is online the safest plan? Absolutely. Is it the best plan? Again, in my eyes, I don't know. You're minimizing the risk to the best of your ability, of course. I think it then becomes a budget versus what a safety plan. Because if the budget was there and we could do both, then I would say a hybrid plan is there. And those are just my comments. I mean, like I say, there's a million questions for my 4 kids that I have, just so the viewing audience knows. I've got a first grader. I've got a one going into 6th and two going into 8th. So I've got 4 kids in my home with my wife, and thank God she stays home, because if we're both working, I get it with the working families. It's a nightmare. But then again comes in the internet issue, the great questions. I believe Nicole Hales asked that question. The internet issues, the amount of Chromebooks, how is all this going to take place? And I've got a variety of concerns with going down from 6.5 hours in a classroom to an hour and a half online, if it's even that at that point in time. But so I appreciate everybody's time. I know everybody is working their hardest. The teachers, the Colt team, Jill, I'm sure you are just spinning your wheels, and I appreciate everything you guys have all done. I'm doing the same thing in my work, and you got to make the hard decisions. And I guess one question I would ask everybody is, if we were in phase 5, if the governor said we're in phase 5 tomorrow, would we all be answering the questions the same way? I don't know the answer to that, but that means it's safer. Does that mean kids go back in school in phase 5? Casinos are open. I don't know where the decision-making process comes in. So that's all I got. And thank you for everything. And all the parents, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sage. And, if you come up with something else or have a question or comment later, you can always let me go around the room and then we'll get back to you. Okay.
I appreciate it.
Mr. Freitas, do you have anything you wish to ask or comment on?
Yes. Going back to Sean's point about teachers being online and live sessions, in Detroit Public Schools, we were required to be on pretty much most of the day as a teacher. And what I did is during those office hours, I set up small groups where I would work with 3 to 5 students. I'd have to call them. We use Teams, Microsoft Teams in Detroit Public Schools. And my principal would be able to join into my meeting to see what we're doing, talk to the children. It wasn't, I'd present the lesson, I'd give them work, then I'd check back with them. So it wasn't like a whole group instruction. We were able to make it work in Detroit. And it was challenging trying to get everyone with the devices and stuff, but we made it work. Got a lot of interaction with a lot of different students. As far as the other stuff, I appreciate everyone's comments, their emails and stuff. It's been truly a difficult decision. I look at this whole thing from 3 points of view. I'm a father, a teacher, and a school board member. From all my points of view, safety is my #1 concern. As a parent, I'm trusting the school with my most prized possession, my children. As a teacher, I know face-to-face instruction works best. I know there are going to be some students that will not excel as well online that they would in the classroom. Our Southgate teachers know our students very well. They communicate with the students in such a personal way, giving the teacher look to Natalie, or a wink and a smile to Penny to encourage her, or simply tell Maya to sit down and do her work. It's definitely the best form of communication in most situations. As a school board trustee, my view, of course, is from a higher level. Throughout the year on the school board, we look at the best practices, fiscal responsibility, and always student safety, student and staff safety. We don't have all the answers. Each decision we make is going to be met with 10 more questions. There's no pandemic playbook. I wholeheartedly trust the staff, administration, and Southgate to come up with the best plan to ensure the safety and learning for all of our students, knowing this is not going to be an easy task. The proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child," could never be more true during this pandemic. It's going to take teachers, administration, parents, and community members to work together to help our students. We all can do a little bit more to get through this time, whether it's checking in with our students and staff, recommending new technology aids to our teachers, or sending an encouraging note to all of the above. It's imperative that we all share in the care and keeping of these community schools. As a teacher, my district is planning on going with some face-to-face and online learning models. I'm concerned for the health of the students, parents, and teachers. I will tell you, teaching in the spring was hard. We were all floundering trying to come up with the new Zoom perfect teaching techniques. No one had advanced preparation, and it showed. It was concerning to all the teachers as it was to parents. These teachers in the district are dedicated. They'll rise to the challenge in the greater ways that they did in the spring. Dedication to our children's education is their purpose. How I wish how the whole board wishes there was an easy answer to the hundreds of questions in front of us. Deciding to have virtual versus face-to-face instruction just begins the discussion of how the 2021 school year will look. We have not been provided with the answers and barely much guidance from the state. It's my opinion the best option is to start online and monitor the situation closely. In doing all the research I can to make the best decision, I was struck by a superintendent at a different school system when he said, "In the end, it will be impossible to know if we overreacted or did too much, but it will be quite apparent if we underreacted or did too little." Our safety is the utmost concern for everybody. And I honestly think that the plan in place that we have will need tweaking every couple weeks, every week probably, with parents looking in and saying, "This isn't working for my child," but the teacher's going to make adjustments, just like the teachers make adjustments in the classroom. So I'm confident that it's not going to be easy, but together with the parents saying, "Hey, this is working good, this isn't working good," we can put the best plan in place. So I thank the Colt team and everyone else who has presented. This is not an easy decision we're upon.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. Mr. Craig, do you have anything for us at this point?
I do, thank you. I guess I have a couple questions and comments. First is, and I guess I'm not sure if anybody from the Colt team can answer or wants to answer, just jump in. But so we talked about testing in the plan. If you have a positive test, can you run that down for me again? So you have a teacher or a student test positive. That means we get a confirmation that there's a positive test. What's the protocol then, if we're face to face?
The protocol for a student that shows symptoms is to move the student from the classroom setting, to notify the parent right away. And then based on the roadmap and the protocols put in place is to then communicate with the health department and so on. We would not then test the entire classroom. We would notify parents to let them know that there was a case if it was determined to be positive. Again, it would be probably unknown at that moment because the test has not come back positive. But we would then determine on how we identify with the parents and so on of all the students in that classroom and let them know that they should be tested if they are showing symptoms.
That's what I'm talking about. If we have a positive test, we get the confirmation back.
So a positive COVID positive test, for example, a teacher is in a face-to-face environment, she tests positive. If she was walking around and lecturing and meeting with students in small groups, the entire class is quarantined for 14 days.
Okay. And then what's the protocol for the wait time of a test? So again, we'll go back to Mr. Martin's example. We have a teacher who exhibits symptoms. They're in class on Monday. They go home Monday night. They start running a fever, get a sore throat. They're not supposed to come in on Tuesday, right? because they're showing symptoms. So then they go get a test Tuesday afternoon. What's the protocol for the time between when they get that I feel this way and they get a test result? Because we could be talking 7 days. So they start feeling better on Tuesday, they're not allowed to come in, right? Or Wednesday, they're not allowed to come in while a test is pending. I didn't see anything in there about while a test is pending, what to do.
So keep in mind that we only took bullet points. We didn't put every scenario in, but they are required to not come back until they have a negative test or until they've been released from a doctor.
But are we notifying students that they've been in contact with, that they had symptoms, they feel like they needed to go get a test, they went and got a test, and it's going to be another 7 days before they get a result? Are we notifying people that they should be careful, quarantining? I mean, what's the process?
The Wayne County Health Department has not said that we have to notify while we're waiting for test results.
Okay. And then so let's say we do have to quarantine. What's the process for educating kids while they're being quarantined?
So our option is to put those students on a remote learning plan for those 2 weeks that they're quarantined. If the teacher is ill, then we would have to consider a substitute teacher doing that remotely.
Because if we're back face-to-face, then those teachers are going to be doing face-to-face instruction. How do you do remote and face-to-face? That was one of our battles that we kind of realized early on, right? Was trying to live in two worlds was not going to be possible.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I guess I have a question for Wendy. So having supplemental internet, that's not new, right? We've had that for people who are at need in the past. Is that true?
If they've needed internet at home, we provided some options, yes.
Okay. So we know how to do that. We've done it before. So it's not going to be a new thing that we have to learn how to do or provide.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then it's also going to be, and if this was called out in the plan and I didn't see it, then I apologize. But students will also have the option of blending Atlas with the synchronized classes, right? Just like they would have if they wanted to take like 2 online classes in a regular year face-to-face.
I mean, I suppose they could. I guess the only other hesitation we would have, at least with K-8, is if those remote classes turned into face-to-face, then...
I don't think that's an option at K-8, is it? Like in a regular year, K-8 doesn't have the option of taking online classes, do they?
They can.
They can take a class here?
No. 6-8 could take a class here or there.
Right.
K-5 would have to be 100% online, but they technically 6-8 could take a class here or there online.
Because it's more common at the high school, I think, where high school students will choose to take this class or that class through the Atlas program and then be in person for a handful of other classes. So that's still going to be an option. I guess maybe specifically at the high school, that'll still be an option if kids want to do that.
I mean, I guess it would be, a case-by-case basis. We could, definitely, talk with the family to see what their needs are. But typically, if they want online, it's for flexibility reasons. And if they're already remote, or they take Atlas because there's a conflict, they have a class that's offered at this time or a class that's offered at this time. So, I mean, but of course, definitely they could do both if they chose.
Because they may have already picked that. Like when they picked their classes last year, they may have already picked some kind of a blended where they were going to be in person for some classes and online for others. They would still be able to do that. We would just, instead of the in-person, we would be doing the synchronized learning. So it's not like they have to pick one path or another and say, I'm going to be all in class or synchronized, or I'm going to be all on Atlas at the high school. They can bounce back and forth, right?
Like they have in the past.
like they have in the past. Yeah. So that won't be changing though, right?
Yeah,
There's
I
nothing
don't.
changing.
Yeah, I don't see that changing at all.
Okay. And then maybe again, it's in the complete plan because we just kind of got the bullet points, but phase 4 does not require face-to-face learning. It was kind of, that's all we saw on the slide was phase 4 face-to-face, but phase 4 also allows for the remote learning like we're going to be offering, right?
So the actual language in the plan does not necessarily say that you have the option. It calls for in-person instruction. The governor has later clarified in remarks that each district can make the decision that's based on the best for their district.
Okay. All right. And then the kind of touching on a topic that Mr. Sage had is about the actual time or the actual instruction time that we're looking at for some of the, especially like K-5 students, is not going to be 6 hours, but in a regular class, in a regular year, they don't have 6.5 hours of instruction. I mean, there's recess in there. There's lots of other activities that happen in the course of a K-5 day. I kind of learned that when I volunteered through Watchdogs, is, it's not 6.5 hours of nose in a book. It's, there is a lot of moving around, a lot of picking up and putting down, a lot of picking up from one class and moving to another. So I think if you were to whittle it down to actual time, I think we're going to be hitting pretty close to those marks based on your chart. So I don't see a big difference or loss, in that. And then I think this plan kind of is going to need to be refined. Finer points are going to need to be touched and worked. And this is maybe similar to a budget where we get tossed a best idea of what we think something's going to be. We're asked to approve it, knowing that we're going to have to modify it and change things and amend it, and seeing how that goes. So I'm fine with that. And then I think that's all I had. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Mr. Lamas, you wish to speak at this point? Do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. I'll be short. I see some of the same inconsistencies that Sean mentions. I can think of some less savory examples of what is allowed to open and what isn't, or more restricted. We have no control over those. Our governor is the one who makes those decisions. So with that in mind, another inconsistency that makes the see that we're in a pretty uncertain one, that even the experts don't really know what this is all about. And if it isn't evident to everyone, it should be now. I mean, just today I read about a study, and I can't remember where it was done, but just recently, where it's 6 to 16 feet is where aerosols can move inside a room. This is maybe at Johns Hopkins, I can't recall. It just popped up on my Google search today. But this whole idea about 6 feet is suddenly out the window indoors. And most people roundly applauded the study and mentioned that there could be some inconsistencies on how the aerosol were measured and whether it would be the same as we would inhale it. But in any case, aerosols move across a wide space in a very short period, less than 5 minutes. So things are going to continue to evolve to similar to what Jason just mentioned, and we're going to have to adjust. So as I'm trying to figure out the rationale for the decision that I made last week and why I'm sticking with it, here's one of my observations. I think that we're very, very good and skilled and have been for a long time and proven it at face-to-face learning and teaching. So if we're just learning how to do the remote, and I'm not being disparaging, we probably have different skill sets there, and I suspect everyone would probably agree. So if we were to start off face-to-face, in spite of the potential uncertainties and danger and safety issues we're all aware of, and we were unfortunately hit very soon or very shortly thereafter with some illnesses that caused us to revert and no longer be face-to-face, our scramble to remote learning is going to be pretty chaotic. It's going to be tough enough as it is. So I'm more comfortable with a decision to begin remote right now in a relatively non-chaotic environment that we can control better now. And then as we measure change, we can move to something we really know very well a lot more easily. So if that doesn't make sense to everyone, that's how I've kind of come to the same conclusion I did last week, and that I would favor this going to remote. So hopefully that adds a little bit of logic to that decision. And then I have two questions, and I suspect maybe Ms. Pastor can best answer. One is, as we were talking about the sign-up choices for parents, old days, I assume the parents signed up the kids at the building, went in, took them on first day, and we were rocking, got them in the right classroom. Do we have a clear path and an easy communication protocol for parents to figure out how to sign up for what they're going to do and get started on all this?
So it'll start with an all-call message from me that will be followed up by an email that will have a link to a Google Doc that will begin to ask them to commit to the remote learning or Atlas. Having said that, there are always glitches, and that we will be reaching out to those families that don't respond by August 19th to hopefully gather their commitment for the beginning of school.
Thank you. I all the millions of little questions are going to come out then, and I assumed you had a way to react to that because I suspect we'll be getting a lot of phone calls. And then on the technology side of things, I understand that we're probably, at least on the front, prepared with the right number of Chromebooks and hotspots. What if, and maybe not what if, when a Chromebook is broken in a home, which I suspect maybe that never happens. I imagine it probably will. Do we have a plan there so that the learning doesn't get interrupted in any horrible, horrible way to the group?
Yes, we do have replacements and
Okay.
warranties for the Chromebooks.
Okay, so we'll have some backup when the inevitable occurs.
Yes, we do. Well, we have, we're going to purchase replacement parts, and then we have spares to be able to swap those Chromebooks out.
You guys can't do your magic without the Chromebooks. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamas. Next, I'm going to call on Dr. Pomponio. Dr. Pomponio, do you wish to speak at this time?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Okay, so I want to start off with a couple of questions, or a few questions that I have with regard to the priority standards of learning. Is there a change to what's the normal process of the standards for curriculum for online? Has it been revised or changed for the online environment?
Not really changed, but we are definitely having to focus on the priority standards, knowing that, I know, Dr. Pomponio, how many standards that we have to cover in each of the content areas, that it's nearly impossible to truly do that in a face-to-face setting, let alone a remote setting. So we're really honing in on those priority standards. And then we've actually done some work with a protocol, actually in the spring, where we addressed those priority standards that students did not get to master due to the closure. So we've got documents prepared to work those into the grade level content for this school year. So we're really focusing on the essential priority standards, so that we know we're honing in on those so students will be successful in the following year.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I have is, okay, I do know that students have different learning styles, or how they learn, visual or any other way, and teachers as well, how they teach. So with students, let's say they start online and they're not used to online, maybe they can't adjust. Do we have benchmarks for them as far as if they're starting to struggle? Do we have resources in place? And how would we pick up on that? Would the parent have to say, well, my student's kind of getting behind, they're getting nervous, they don't know if they're falling behind? And would the teacher have benchmarks for that student to say, oh, we're going to get you some extra support, or is there tutoring available? Those kind of resources for students who may struggle through the online environment.
So one of the things that's required with the roadmap is that we have checkpoints that administrators are reviewing regularly for student progress. So what that looks like with each teacher, it's actually on our agenda for ad staff for this week, and what those checkpoints look like, so that there's regular opportunities to review progress and not let, a whole month go by before we've seen that a student has been struggling or not completing work. So definitely we are going to set those protocols up so that we're more proactive rather than reactive. And then I feel like you had a second piece to that question, but I don't remember what it was.
Was there tutoring available? Did you cover that?
Yeah. So no, there's some time built in the day where we've got at all levels where there's some opportunity for reteaching or MTSS or RTI work, so that our MTSS folks can identify those students that are struggling and set up additional tutoring or small group instruction for those students. And hopefully it's even, built in with we've got win time again, and in a remote setting, it's going to look a little different. But we're going to attempt it so that we can identify what students have not been successful in mastering certain priority standards and target those students and plan for that reteaching and that instruction.
Okay, thank you. And the final question I have is, do we have all the social, emotional, and wellness resources available online for easy access? Let's say if there's depression starting to set in for teenagers, or if there's any issues with maybe through this quarantine, students are starting to feel claustrophobic or whatever they may be going through. Do they have access? I know you mentioned the social workers and counselors available, but is there a website that we have with all of those resources available to parents and students?
So yes, we actually have a social and emotional page off of our website that was recently added. The social workers worked pretty hard during the closure to get that up and going. And just to remind you that the screening tools are designed to try to gather information for those students that are struggling in one area or another in order for us to intervene.
Okay, thank you. And I do have some things I want to add. So this has been a very difficult decision, a lot of things to weigh, and I've taken a lot of notes, and there's really too much to really add to this piece right here, right now. But I do want to say a few things, but I just want to let everyone know that it's not an easy decision. And as a parent and as a board member, it's so difficult because you can't think about just your kids. You have to think about the whole, everyone as a whole, that's the students, the teachers. And, I started thinking about, it's not easy. And when one of the parents mentioned about giving parents a choice, that's one of the things that I thought about. Absolutely. There's the kindergartners starting kindergarten. I have 2 twin grandsons that are starting kindergarten, and all of those things that come with it, all the activities, and the students that are starting middle school. Oh my God, this is a milestone for them. And then those students who are starting high school, they want those norms back. They want to start the way things used to be. Maybe they don't know anyone with COVID. Maybe they're not close to that or have seen the illness, but it's real, it's out there. And so I thought about all of that. And, I do have a daughter who's a junior this year, and who knows where this is going to lead. We don't know what path it's going to take. We don't know really a lot about it. We're just going step by step. So personally, I would love that face-to-face, the teachers, that's a big component of the learning process, that teacher interaction and what they mean to the students. I can tell you all the teachers that my daughter, remembers and misses and talks about all the time about Mrs. Gutner, Mrs. Babiak, or Mrs. Hannah, all these teachers that are a big part of their milestones and their learning and growing. So I get it. And I do get that, there's busy schedules. I have an older daughter who, she works, she's a nurse, she works as a nursing student, she goes to nursing school. So she's going to be conflicted with the scheduling, and I feel for her too. So I understand completely all of those different aspects of what parents are going through and the different things you have to think about. But, on the other hand, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about all of our students, our little guys and our teenagers and our juniors, seniors, and, I don't want any, and our teachers, our administrators, everyone that we know and love. I don't want to see anything happen to one of them. They've all crossed our paths in different ways and at different times. And I look at it in a safety and health position, because I hear, and I've read all of the articles with 97,306 confirmed cases, 6,525 deaths, 411 cases in Southgate, and 34 deaths in Southgate. And as of Tuesday, August 11th, Michigan's reporting 796 new COVID cases and 7 more deaths. And then, you hear this, and just a little bit of my experience. I work I have my own business and I do mortgage closing. So I go face to face with parents and people and all over. And I get that they have different views and opinions, because I'm keeping myself safe. And through conversations, I'm hearing, well, my daughter has COVID, and I'm doing business through the phone and from a distance. And after hearing this, I'm thinking, I would have never known, or you don't know who's telling you that they have it, or if they're asymptomatic. So there's a lot of bullets I've dodged along the way. And it's, all of those things have crossed my mind. And like I said, if you don't know anyone who's had it, or if you don't know anyone who's been sick and who's suffered from it, you don't really know that it's real or can happen. So I look at the data, and I look at the asymptomatic people. And like I said, the bottom line is, when it comes to all of our students, all of our staff, I cannot risk one person, not even one person, getting COVID with my decision to say go back face to face. So that's why I support 100% online. So I just want to give you a little bit of my perspective, and knowing that I definitely understand where the parents come from, and hopefully we can work through the inconveniences. But that's this. I just feel like not one person is something that I'm willing to risk at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. P. Now we go to our Vice President, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the nice thing about going toward the end, unlike last week, is I can hear many of the things that I have on my list are things that have already been brought up, so I don't want to be redundant. I too am a parent. I have a 12-year-old here and a 4-year-old. I have Jennifer, who has to work. We know that for sure. I am a teacher, and my district has not determined whether I have to go to work either. So I do feel, and that to me is a really big concern that Mr. Sage brought up. And a lot of the parents in the comments and the emails and the texts that I received personally, or the board has received in the last 8 days. It is something that I haven't figured out yet. And to be 100% honest, I don't have a great answer for that. Looking at the overall picture, I will have to say that what we're dealing with is not unique to us or to this board. I know last Monday it seemed like it, because we were one of the first districts that had tilted our hand to what we were thinking about doing. Since then, there has been other boards that are struggling with the same situation. When this started, I want to make a couple things clear. Ms. Pastor and I believe, talked almost immediately with being in phase 4 when we heard that districts were going remote. Didn't even think that was an option. We didn't even think it was legal. It's not how it's written out. But it seems that the governor has made it clear that it can be an option. And what you're seeing is that many districts have revisited that because of the numbers going up, or whatever source you read or look at. And that's where, some districts are looking at this in a different lens. I don't know when all the comments were sent, and I'm not trying to cause any problems. I know the passions are really strong both ways in all communities. I've read a couple of community boards. I'm a parent. I've read the community board here. And many of us on this board have really done the research and tried to listen to people. I've tried to answer everybody. I know other board members have. I've given out my personal phone number. You can email me. I will give you my personal phone number and I will talk to you one-on-one, whether I agree with you or not, or whether you agree with me or not, and have a respectful conversation. But we're not the only ones that are struggling with this. And so just to give you an idea, a little bit of what we're dealing with, if you look at Downriver community, what's considered 15 schools, and I hear this and that, but by all accounts, and don't hold me 100% to this, out of the 15 assumed Downriver schools, 7 have voted or are going to vote tonight to start remotely to be safe, whether you agree with that or not. The 33 schools that encompass Wayne Risa, it looks like 18 of them out of the 33, or about 50%, approximately, a little over, are going to do the same. So we're not in the minority doing this like some people think. Maybe a couple weeks ago we were. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's factual. If you look at medical professionals, there's an article of 20 I always say this word wrong, epidemiologists in one article that I read. 6 said they would send their kids back, that it's safe. 8 said they weren't sure. 6 said they wouldn't. Comments ranged from young people don't spread it as much to, and I quote, it'd be really stupid to send kids back now. Now, I can put names on this. That's the history teacher in me coming out. I do some research. I'm not going to give you every name or the notes that I have. Just from the people I've talked to or responded to, I've talked to or responded to 29 people. Out of those 29 people, it's almost 50-50 who thinks it's safer to come back, who thinks that we need face-to-face. Kind of the same thing with a limited supply of comments tonight. It's almost 50-50. From my notes, there are 4 nurses. 2 said we should come back. 2 said we shouldn't. So these are the struggles that we're all dealing with. One that I didn't see in a comment or hear unless I missed it, and she did give me the right to talk to her, and I want to acknowledge this or say her name, is Rebecca Heyer, who was a nurse, sent the entire board CDC guidelines. And I want to acknowledge that I read them. I think I'm pretty sure the whole board did. I appreciate that. I talked to Rebecca for at least a half hour. We texted each other last night. She gave me her viewpoint, which I respect, that we should go back face to face. I gave her my viewpoint at this point, that I think we all want to go back face to face. We didn't run for the board. We're not teachers or educators or involved in public education not to go face to face. The question is, should we at this point? And depending on who you ask, that becomes almost impossible situation to appease everyone. I will say, going back to talking to Miss Pastor, and I do want to make it clear that Miss Pastor obviously has a big say in what happens, but I think she was unfairly criticized with the survey when people say it was 60% to 40%. At the time the survey was sent out, we did not know that, in all honesty, the governor was going to shift, to be honest, in the 4th stage, saying that you could do remote learning. So that was not an option on that survey. Many people last week, if you looked at the chat room and in the people that I've talked to, and a couple that mentioned it tonight, that if they were given the option of a Southgate teacher to teach their student, would have chose that option. The other thing is to please realize, as Miss Dr. Baker Herring said, that this is not permanent all year like some people think or are assuming, because we didn't put a time on it last week. This is going to be something that's going to be reevaluated at the set date, which is in the mid-October. and see where we're at numbers wise, so forth and so on. Some points that were made tonight that I think haven't been answered, and I think it's fair that we answer them. So, one was that the experts say it's safe. I think that depends on who you ask. I do understand what the CDC says, but like I said, you can look at other epidemiologists and other pediatricians who say that it's not the right time. A question was posed, am I willing to lose, as a school board member, 10 to 20% of our students to other districts? The only way I can answer that is I don't want to lose any student from Southgate. I will tell you that a couple districts have already made it clear that they are not going to take students and put more face-to-face students in their district. That's not their purpose. I hope we don't lose 10 to 20%. I'm sure some districts will, and there's other options. I hope that doesn't happen. But if it really comes down to it, and I was asked for the first 6 weeks to look at numbers that are still relatively high versus losing students, even though it would hurt us dollar-wise, yes, I would be willing to take that risk. We are taking that risk. There's no doubt about it. We're taking that risk right now. We also have had parents that have told us that if we didn't offer a teacher virtual, that they would leave also. So again, it's a situation that is just not going to appease everyone. So I just wanted to make clear that we're not the only district dealing with this. The problem to me is everybody's right. When I talk to the student that said, or the parent that says, we have a single parent household, we have to work, or we both work, I'm in that situation. The parent that says, I'm afraid for the safety because there's not enough information yet. There hasn't been 30 kids in a classroom since March, so we don't really know. In their mind, they're right. And I can't deny any of those situations because for you personally, those are all real. But the bottom line is what's best. And I think at this point, with no clear-cut answer and everybody across the board, or it seems like in this area, 50-50 or 60-40 or in that range, we have to make a decision that's not going to please everyone, and that's terrible. Again, I will talk and call anybody back who calls me, and I will talk to you. And like I said, I give the utmost respect for everybody I talk to. Miss Heyer, who probably disagreed with me the most on the phone, was probably one of the most respectful and nicest people I have ever talked to in my life, to be honest with you. So I just want to make that clear. So with that being said, I do have some questions now. Question number one is special education. So I'm sure this is directed towards Ms. Pastor or Dr. Baker-Herring. If Ms. Thomas is not on this call, our support service students, the uniqueness, even with the learning labs, is their plan going to be an individualized IEP? I saw something about that a little bit, but just to clarify, individualized IEP under these conditions for the first 6 weeks, so they get the needs that their needs are met.
So we will be making every effort we can to comply with all IEPs. It will be, for example, before the staff set their scheduling, we will be looking at which students in special education need services from the resource room teacher. As most buildings only have 1 to 2 people, we need to set those schedules first. So we are very aware that we need to be extra sensitive and make sure that we meet those needs as is required by law.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pastor. My second question is a parent's question about, would a student fail on attendance, or are we going to be able to record lessons? Is there going to be any kind of way we work out with that parent who may be on 2 or 3 classes, they're absent, that their kindergartner, 6th grader, 11th grader, I don't care what grade they're in, are not available at that time, but can see the lesson at a later date?
So it is our intention to try as often as we can to record some lessons, but as you see here, there are many people on this, and so if I were teaching a lesson and this were my environment, I would be recording students, and that wouldn't be what we would want to have recorded to share at a later time. So we will be trying to meet those needs. It depends on the family. If they are never able to attend lessons during the day, it may be a better option for them to choose Atlas so that they can access that curriculum when is most convenient for them.
Thank you. My next question would be the question on latchkey. Did we answer that? Are we going to offer latchkey? Is there any kind of plan for latchkey, or is that something that's in the works?
So in talking to Ms. Crystal Priest, it does not look like we have the staff to provide latchkey in our buildings with our current guidelines. There are some other options that I will be checking into that I'd rather not share until I know that we have a solution for some families.
Sorry, Miss Pastor, but I'm going to keep coming at you in a good way, I hope. Our CTC classes, our CTC courses, from what was sent to the board, which we partner with other districts who may be offering face-to-face through Ford, the mechanical program, for example, sent out, or we saw as a board, that they are following proper protocol, that we have 4 or 5 students at a time in classrooms that are 2 or 3 times as big as ours. They will definitely be able to sanitize. They will be able to social distance, if you will. The CTC program I didn't see mentioned in the COLE program. I want to make sure that we're understanding that, or where we're at with the CTC program, and I would like to see, because of the protocols that sound like they're in place in a different environment, that we continue that service for our students. Is that possible, or has that not been determined yet?
So in talking to John Nazarjeski, who is the CTE coordinator of the 9 districts that make up the DCTC consortium, we do believe that we could offer mechatronics at the Ford plant. That is a Southgate teacher. That would be an off-site offering that mostly services students from all 9 districts. That would be the only class that we believe would be a live instructor, because it's not on our campus. Jason Martin is currently acting as the DCTC coordinator in the district, in absence of someone being assigned at the high school right now, and he would also support this if the teacher is willing to do that.
Thank you. This is going to be probably a difficult question for some, but it was brought up in lieu of what we saw today in college athletics. Are we still sticking with the protocol that we are going to follow MHSA guidelines, or is that a fluid situation that will be revisited, daily or weekly?
So I honestly cannot imagine that the Michigan High School Athletic Association will be continuing with football. But at this point, I don't know what to expect. Our football team is not practicing this week and are currently scheduled to return next week, unless we hear otherwise from the Michigan High School Athletic Association.
Thank you, Ms. Pastor. Finally, I'm going to close this up by saying that, again, this is something that this board, for some people who think that we're not doing our job, we have worked hours trying to understand and come up with a solution for all, as many boards are. I watched so many board meetings the last 2 weeks, and Ms. Pastor and I are texting each other as we're watching them. In one board member is absolutely, we need to go face to face. I was a medical professional. Another board member at a different school is absolutely not. And we've had our discussions internally. So even though you may not agree with us, we do have your child's interest and the school district interest best at heart. I know some of you don't believe that, but we really do. We're really trying. We want to be face to face, but we also want to be safe in the situation. And that's again, I said it last week, I'll say it again, the toughest decision I've ever had to make. And I totally respect every opinion of everybody I've talked to or haven't talked to. I totally respect the opinion of what I've heard from my board members that I've already heard, and from, the administration, and what I'll hear from Mr. Estheimer, and that the Colt team, they were put in an impossible situation. And these teachers, administrators, the superintendent, the curriculum director, worked tirelessly in many, many hours to try to put something together that somehow works for us to be safe and have a robust learning, and hopefully to get back to face-to-face. As for the teacher's point of view, I can tell you that the way teaching works these days, for those of you that don't know, if somebody walked into my high school classroom and I was lecturing 55 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and I was evaluated, I would be written up or fired. I mean, that's just, the student-based learning is really where education is headed. So I understand what Mr. Sage and others and parents have concerns on, but if you have a 45-minute class one day and the teacher is available the next day and you're writing an assignment, or you can get into small group works, as Mr. Ferkus said, and there's some asynchronous learning, that's what you would see in a classroom also. Is it perfect? No. Is face-to-face better? Absolutely, 100%. But we're trying to do the best we can under the circumstances, and we are better prepared than we were 6 months ago. Please note that in March, we were ordered by the governor that you could not hold a student harmless. We could not give them a grade lower than what they received when they walked out of our classroom. Therefore, it was very difficult for some students to come or even be motivated. And I know there's going to be students that aren't going to be motivated. It's going to be very difficult for them still. But this should, and hopefully does, look different, not only in our district that may start remotely, but in other districts. And then hopefully we can eventually get back to some sort of normalcy sometime. That's all I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you to my board members. Thank you to Ms. Pastor, DBH, and the Colt team, the entire community, whether you agree with us or not. Again, call us, talk to us. Let's try to work through this together, whether we agree with each other or not. Thank you, Mr.
Green. All right, before I get started here on my comments, I wanted to check in. So I had a question about IEPs and about students with disability. It looks like those were covered, the CTC. I'm not sure we went too much into the Beacon Day, and I know that's a little bit complicated as it's there's other schools that feed into that, but how is Beacon going to look on a day-to-day basis? Are they going to be all virtual and asynchronous or synchronous as well?
So according to the directive, I believe that they would be starting remotely as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, let me go into my comments here. I wanted to also thank all the parents and guardians that have submitted questions and comments tonight. Thanks to our Colt team and to all the presenters. Thanks to Dr. Baker Herring for her important role and stability through this process. Thanks to our superintendent for her strong leadership and her active role in uniting all involved, as well as the staff of the Board of Education. These teams have only just begun their work. Tonight's vote will further that initiative, and the team will get to work on a rollout to parents very soon. Lastly, thank you to my fellow board members who have worked around the clock the past few weeks communicating with parents and monitoring the situation in preparation for tonight's meeting and this ultimate vote. Also, a special thanks to Vice President Green, who took a lead role and has been laser focused, providing updates to the board on a regular basis and communicating with the many of you that have emailed us. I've spent the last 4.5 years on this board in service to our students and have had to make many difficult decisions with the best interests of our children in mind. Changing transportation companies and laying off teachers, I thought, would be the most difficult decisions of my time here. This year was supposed to be a celebration for us with the passing of a bond and the many benefits our school will receive from that passage. Beautiful new turf field, new weight room for our student athletes, new pool, and many other building improvements. Sadly, those amazing and historic improvements are overshadowed by this pandemic, and those tough decisions we made in the past are not nearly as monumental as the ones facing us tonight. What makes this so difficult is that both of the options, virtual, online, or face-to-face, are bad for children right now and their individual development. To complicate things, I know that every single one of our students will be impacted differently based on tonight's vote. In reading the many emails and texts, I agree with almost everything many of you said. Children need routine and regular social interaction. Parents should be given a choice. Online or virtual learning is not as effective as in person. Kids are unable to social distance. Kids will be unable to wear a mask all day. I don't know how I'm going to work. I'm afraid that me or my child will contact the virus. Those that are in support of face-to-face must also understand that education environment that we are proposing to send our children back to is not the student-centered place we remember. No welcoming hugs from the teacher in the morning, no interaction with classmates and friends in the lunchroom, no high fives from the principal, no group projects in the classroom. Heck, I'm not even sure if I'd be allowed to go in and read to the kids during reading month. The proposed in-person instruction will not be an environment that's conducive to a child's well-being. It'll be isolated, socially distant learning. It'll be an experiment, as our teachers and students have never taught or learned this way before. It will, however, be something that we ultimately will get to after this short pause to virtual learning. Another factor to consider is the unstable state of our staffing situation related to a viral spread and how that leaves our system erratic and prone to unannounced and unpredictable shutdowns. If a teacher tests positive, then what? You may find out your student has to quarantine, like Mr. Craig said, for 14 days without notice, putting parents on short notice in exactly the same position, albeit temporary, that we find ourselves in tonight. While considering a virtual start, having teachers get sick worries me. It worries them. If something like 10% of the staff in a building get sick, a school would have to close. This level of volatility would cause more disruption for families because it would come without warning. Nobody disagrees that face-to-face instruction is the best choice for students, but is it the safest? The thought of losing one life, as many of my board members have said to this, is terrible, and it weighs heavy on all of us. I don't believe we're making decisions based on fear like some said. I believe it's a combination of science and the feedback that we get from our medical professionals. If we decided at this point to return to school with cases in Michigan reaching 600 to 700 a day or a much higher rate today, would that be the best for our students? I realize and I heard from many of you how much of a struggle this is going to be for you and your family. Having smaller children learning virtually and working parents left trying to figure out how to keep their children connected when they're struggling just to find someone to watch the kids while they're at work. I hear you. I wish I had an answer. I strongly believe that choosing to start now virtually for a short period of time would be less disruptive for students, as Mr. Lamos has pointed out, for a short period of time. It would be less disruptive to students and families than to find out on a Friday and have to figure it all out on a Monday if the governor changed the order. So it's with a heavy heart that I plan to vote in favor of a virtual start to the school year. Having said that, it's my sincere hope that Titans can once again come together and unite. Our children yearn for and desire our grace and unity, especially in times like these, and they need us to come together very soon. This definitely won't be our last tough decision on this board, but how our students see us handle, how they see the adults in their life handle this, may be the greatest lesson ever. Remember, Titans unite. And with that, we will move to action item 1, approval of the Southgate Community School District COVID-19 Preparedness and Response Plan.
You're being asked to approve the Southgate Community School District COVID-19 Preparedness and Response Plan as presented. This plan states that the Southgate Community School District will begin the 2021 year remotely for all students. We will reevaluate this decision on October 13th, 2020, unless otherwise directed by a government agency, with a possible return of face-to-face instruction on Monday, November 9th, 2020.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Southgate Community School District COVID-19 Preparedness and Response Plan as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Pompolia. And who was that supported?
Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Lamas. All right. I know we've all had a chance to speak, and I believe most have detailed their thoughts, but if we'd like to go around the room one more time, Mr. Craig, you're first.
Thank you. So first, I'd like to thank the Colt team for all their work on this. I know it's not easy to say, hey, come here and do something you've never done before. Come here and figure out how we're gonna put this plan together. And so I appreciate very much the efforts they've done. I also want to say thank you to the parents for participating. You know, everybody who sent in a comment participated in the meeting last week or watch it tonight, watched last week. It was great to see, because very often our attendance is low. We breeze through a meeting in a couple minutes. We don't really get to interact with people at that level, and I like seeing the participation. I hope it doesn't end just with this. I hope we can kind of keep that going. My vote tonight is going to be based on safety. I think this is the safest plan. I think this is the safest thing we can do. And I wish I knew the future. I wish I knew where we were going to be with this in a month and a half. I don't know. But so with that, I will be supporting the motion. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Has anybody else had a chance to speak? Does anybody wish to add anything? If not, we'll call the question.
I wanted to add something.
Go ahead, Dr. Pomponia.
I just wanted to, with all my comments and everything, I haven't had a chance, but I want to thank Mrs. Pastor, Dr. Baker, and all of the entire COLT team for the time and work that you put into this plan, and both for remote and face-to-face for all the phases, and for all the hours that you put in for the, in the summer for Southgate students. So I wanted to thank you, each and every one of you, and then thank the parents for all the support and all of the attention that you've given to this important decision. So thank you for reaching out. And if I haven't contacted you back, I will shortly, but I just can't thank the staff and teachers enough for all the work that they put in for the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sage.
Thank you. So I can't agree more with Mr. Green that what he said is everybody's right. Everybody is right. There's no easy solution. Word on here has a valid point in one way or another, and I appreciate him saying that. And there's no easy answer. Mr. Craig is 100% correct as far as the amount of time that you're actually going to be teaching. But the other side of the coin is now you have a parent watching your kids socialize or doing those things while they may be working, as opposed to the teacher with social interaction, things like that. So it's completely different, even though the instruction part is maybe 90 minutes. It's completely different doing it at home and in school. The virus is real. Dr. Darlene said, how close does it hit to home? My niece was, and I apologize, my niece was on the vent for 60 days. My niece had a trach put in. My niece fought for her life for 120 days, and she finally came out today. So I'm not making my decision lightly in any way. My parents have a compromised immune system. My in-laws have compromised immune system. I'm basing my vote on the whole child, not the COVID child, the whole child. So you can see I'm emotional about this. I'm emotional because I care about the kids, my kids, your kids, every kid out there. I appreciate every teacher out there. I think you do an amazing job. And in this, me saying the instruction doesn't have any bearing on the teachers. It has a bearing on the whole child. The instructions there. Thank you to the parents. Mrs. Pastor, thank you for staying on. I mean, without you, none of this would have happened. And you could easily walk away from all of this. And you have stuck around and fought the fight. In Michelle, in the COLT team, I can't say enough about any of you. And the board, whatever the decision is, and I know where the decision is going, I'm 100% behind the whole decision. As we said from day one, as I said in last meeting, we're a team. I may not agree with it. I have my own opinion, but collectively, whatever the decision is, and I fully respect it and get behind it. But I am basing my decision on the whole child, not just because of the virus. Thank you.
Thanks for that heartfelt response, Mr. Sage. Is there anybody else that wishes to say anything?
Mr. President.
Go ahead, Mr. Green.
I want people to know also that this is fluid, just like anything else. This is changing daily on us. If the government comes in and says we have to do A or B, it supersedes this board. I also want to let the parents know that this plan is going to be evolving, and we're going to find things that don't work, and we need our hope that you can stay with us as we try to fix it along the way, because this is new territory for everyone, every board, every district, and it would be new territory if we went in the classroom. It pains me as a parent, and Mr. Sage is right. It's emotional. It's my 12-year-old daughter is gonna miss band. She's gonna miss choir that she loves. But she says that she doesn't want to go to and be in a jail. But then I know the parents and friends of mine that they can't. And I'm in this boat too. Like I said, they don't know what they're gonna do because they have to work, and it's just an impossible situation. But please, on these boards, and if you can agree or disagree, we are trying. This community, in all communities, turning on each other, it seems, is just heart-wrenching, because it's not about who's winning and who's losing. Nobody is winning right now. There is no easy answer. We are all losing to some degree in this situation, and we're trying to make the best of it, all of us. And I respect what every board member says. I respect the perspective of everybody. I talked to Mr. Sage 20 minutes before this meeting, and it sucks, and I just want everybody to know where everybody stands, and we appreciate you, and we appreciate the parents who are passionate on both sides. The one parent that says this, the other parents who are nurses that told me they're trying to educate people to understand that we can get through this. You're all right. And that's the hard part. It's like having 3 cars or and 4 children, and you got to give a car to everyone. We don't have an easy answer for it. Something's got to give, and we're doing the best that we can. And we hope you understand that, whether you agree with us or not. Look, 313-515-9053. That is my personal phone number. If you want to talk, call me. I'm putting it out there. Call me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. All right. Without any further discussion, we'll go ahead and call the question. Ms. Pastor, will you please roll call vote?
Mr. Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Lamas?
Yes.
Dr. Pomponio?
Yes.
Mr. Sage?
No.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Estheimer?
Yes. All right. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody watching. We still have a bit of a meeting to go here. But I know that was the main vote of the night. We're going to go on with our action items now, though. We're going to go down to approval and purchase of band equipment. Who'll be presenting action item number 2?
I will. As per board policy 5003, all items that exceed $3,500 must be brought to the board for approval. This purchase represents the pianos from Evola Music, wind instruments from Washington Music Center, and percussion instruments from Steve Wise Music. Mr. Toby Komet and Mr. Brandon Walter worked together and secured bids for these items to ensure that we received competitive pricing. All quotes are included. This equipment was included in the 2020 bond application, and therefore the funds will come from the bond proceeds.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff?
I do want to say that this is exciting for me because my daughter was involved in the band and graduated in 2020, and I never remember the board or the district buying any band equipment. So this is exciting for the marching band, although their competitive season this year was canceled.
Mr. President?
Mr. Green.
I would just like to make clear before anything else might be misconstrued. This is bond money that was already passed. A bond ties us to certain things that we can spend money on. It was the bond that was passed before any of this COVID started. 2 days before, unfortunately, we did not know this was going to happen. Again, wish my daughter hopefully benefits from this down the road, but it's not like we could have took this money and hired more teachers to appease everyone, just in case anybody is wondering.
Thanks for the clarification.
Mr.
Anybody
President,
else? Yes, go ahead, Dr. Boconio.
also to add on to Andy's comment, there is a timeline for the bond. I believe that we have to purchase certain things at certain times too. So regardless of the current COVID situation, we have a timeline. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Hey, I have one question to the chair, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Mr. Lamas.
When we first, I mean, given the uncertainty about when we're going to be able to use this equipment, I'm asking through the chair to the superintendent, is there any reason we shouldn't just delay this purchase until, I can think of a number of ideas, but you obviously have worked hard on this and I don't want to interfere, but so we're not going to use this stuff certainly for the next 6 months, right? So
that's not true. So although the competitive marching season has been canceled, band has not been canceled.
and they'll still be able to meet and group and play and perform?
Virtually, they will be doing sessions, yes.
That's real exciting. That's awesome. Okay, thank you. You answered my question on the money.
I just got one.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Sage.
So knowing that this is bond money, I just can't wait to watch the band at States.
Amen.
So they're going to get there and they're going to do it, and I can't wait to watch it.
Absolutely.
I agree.
All right. I'll take a motion, Mr. Craig.
I make a motion to approve the band equipment purchase as presented, not to exceed $271,699.85.
669.85 for clarification. 271,669.85.
Yes.
All right. And do we have a second? Thank you, Dr. Pomponio.
You're welcome.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. We'll call the question. Ms. Pastor?
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Lamas,
Yes.
Dr. Pomponio,
Yes.
Mr. Sage,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. Estheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Freitas.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Moving on down to action item number 3, the 2020 Bond Program Construction Manager Services. Let's push that to the end of the meeting. Just kidding, Rob. All right, Rob, you're up.
Welcome to the game, Rob.
Hey, no problem. I'm glad to be back here this evening. So, actually allowed me to get quite a bit of paperwork done here while I was on listening. So, yeah, today wanted to bring a package to you. Again, this is for the bond program. This is for the construction management services for the entire bond program for both series. The package that I had provided to you guys includes our recommendation letter, a proposal summary, the proposal from the construction manager, and the post-bid interview checklist. I'll kind of run through that information real quick with you guys as an overview, and then open it up to any questions that you may have. So for the construction management services, we did put out a formal RFP on June 29th. We formally issued it to 6 construction management firms, and we held a pre-proposal meeting on July 7th. From there, we received 5 proposals from the firms on July 21st, and immediately started reviewing those proposals. In order to evaluate those, we established a criteria-based selection process, which helped us to identify and review each of those. And we created weighted scoring for each of the different items that we had asked for in the proposals. As part of that criteria, we looked at firm experience, firm approach to the project, the firm's capacity and resources, the project team experience, their EMR safety rating, their bonding capacity, and then their proposed fees and costs for the program. Based on that, we pre-established criteria. We objectively shortlisted 3 firms for interviews. And on July 30th, we held interviews with the project team and those 3 firms. Upon completion of the interviews, the project team here today is recommending Granger Construction Company as the construction management firm for the bond program. Again, that recommendation is based on both their scoring from the criteria-based selection that we did initially and based on the interviews that were conducted with the team. Upon approval of this, we'd look to enter into a standard form of agreement between the owner and construction manager as constructor. It's an AIA document A133 with Granger Construction. Their initial contract would be set up for their pre-construction services, which are not to exceed $165,298. They'd have a pre-construction reimbursable amount not to exceed $5,000, and their CM fee would be 2% for the duration of the bond program. Their construction personnel costs and support services would be reviewed as the costs are finalized and will be set by a guaranteed maximum price amendment at a later date as the bid packages are brought to you guys for approval for those projects. Just to recap, the budget established in the bond application for the construction management fees and costs was 10% of the cost of construction. Granger's contract is projected to be about 8.86% right now, based on the proposal that they had submitted. So we're looking at a little over 1% savings, which equates to about $316,000 just on the CM fees and costs for the bond program. So that kind of summarizes the recommendation letter that I had provided to you guys. The next page shows the proposal summary. Gives you an overview of the 5 proposals that were submitted related to the cost aspects. Again, there was a lot of additional information related to their approach to the projects, their schedule, their teams, their past experience. All that was included in the lengthy proposals that we received from each of the firms. But this proposal summary gives you an overview of the cost aspects for the 5 firms. So you can see a comparison between all of those, and I've highlighted Granger's proposal in that proposal summary for you guys. I also included a copy of the proposal form that they had submitted. If you do look through there, there's a lot of information. It might be hard to read if you printed it out, but we do ask them for a lot of information related to their staffing for their project, how they propose to staff the project for the duration for each of the series that we have and the phases. We really evaluate that. So there's a lot of information in there that we use during the interview and review process. So that was kind of in there for you to review. And then I included the interview checklist just to show some of the questions and answers that were discussed in the meeting with the firm and some of the responses and stuff they had to it. So overall, very pleased with the proposals that we did receive. We had 3 good interviews, I think, with the firms. And based on that, the project team was, I think, overwhelmingly agreed to select Granger Construction for this. I think they'll do an excellent job for you guys. I know they're ready to get started immediately. Jump in with TMP. They have a lot of history with TMP, with school projects, with previous pool projects around. So they have a lot of experience with them. They're eager to get started and jump in this project right away. So if there's anything I can answer for you guys regarding the process that we had or the selection or Granger Construction in general, feel free to ask me any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Krakowski. All right, Dr. Paponia.
Hi, Rob. I have a question about the proposals or the bids that came back, or proposals that came back. They all seem to be like in other counties, Lansing. They're Grangers from Lansing. Was there any local companies that put in a bid at all, or is this too big of a project?
I guess when you say local, are you talking to strictly Southgate?
Well, there's a lot of construction companies downriver or, down the southeastern part of Michigan. I was just curious about the ones that did respond with Novi, Macomb, and Lansing.
Yeah, a lot of the, the firms that do the bigger K-12 work projects of this size, they're not a lot right in this area.
Okay.
Granger does have a local office in Novi, so they do work in this area. So their main office is Lansing, but they do have a Novi office that a lot of their staff does work out of.
Okay, thank you for that. And the other thing I wanted to know is there a profile that we can see? I mean, I'm sure it's good, but if there's any complaints, are we able to see anything transparency-wise that way from customers that maybe they prolong something or, I'm not sure what they, I know Better Business Bureau has like different things, but reviews from clients or customers.
I don't know offhand if there's a direct site outside of something like Better Business Bureau or something. I can look in to see if there is anything. We did, when we put together the initial list of the firms, we spent a lot of time looking at firms that, their capacity, their workload, who's been, aggressively looking at projects right now, who kind of has the experience of pool construction or this type of experience, who's working in the area. Granger is currently working in Huron schools doing their bond program. They're also currently in Van Buren schools with Belleville doing their bond program. So we spent a lot of time putting together the list of the 6 bidders for this. So, we got a lot of feedback from other team members. We have a pretty good handle company-wide of workload for a lot of the firms with a lot of the bond programs that are going on. So, we carefully kind of tried to select this list of firms that we thought we would really fit this program.
Okay, I appreciate that. I trust what you just said because I wasn't quite sure of how that worked or if there was anything that was maybe a disgruntled company or client. So, I'm sure that you guys vetted them well. So thank you.
Yep, Mr. Lamas.
Yes, thank you. Rob, I notice on the summary of each of the 5, there's a row. It says agree to contract terms, and every answer is no. Can you just embellish on that a little bit? That seems a little odd.
We do include with the RFP that we issued, we did issue the contract terms for their review, and each of the firms had a page included in their proposal that had questions or comments related to the contract terms. Some were a couple comments, some were pages long. We did send those over to the district's legal counsel prior to the interviews and got responses on any of those. And by the time we had the interviews, or after the interviews, we already had a meeting with Granger to talk through all their comments and have worked through each of the comments that they had with your district's legal counsel. So we have resolved all those and actually have started drafting a contract based on that follow-up. So
Okay. All right.
It's not uncommon for the firms to take exception, and some of them are clarifications, some are exceptions, and we sat down and were able to work out a contract. Most of the firms had worked with Troon previously, so a lot of the comments had already kind of been approved on other contracts and stuff. So we were able to get through those already and have them resolved. So that initial no is just based off of right when I opened the package, did they have comments or did they agree to it as initially submitted on? So
Got it. No, that answers the legal counsel, and we renegotiate terms all the time. So thank you very much.
no problem.
Is there any further questions for Mr. Kukowski? All right, we'll move to a motion, but would anybody like to make a motion?
This is Rick. I'll make a motion authorizing the superintendent, subject to the review and approval of the school district council, to award the construction manager services to Granger Construction Company.
Thank you, Mr. Lamas.
Support.
Mr. Craig, I heard first. All right, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. Mr. Craig, go ahead.
So I did have the fortune to sit in on these interviews, and I'll tell you, we had 3 good companies. We could have picked any, and I think we'd be successful with them. I did favor Granger as part of mine. That was kind of the overall take on our group, and I guess maybe to kind of answer some of the questions is, so Rick, so when that contract goes out, it is probably a very one-sided contract for us. And then they kind of go, oh, no, wait a minute. And it's all simple stuff. And then one of Darlene's questions, when you're talking about construction of this scale, Lansing is considered local for us here in Southeast Michigan, because it's a select group that can handle this scale of construction. So yeah, this would be, to me, this would be in construction, this would be considered local. But yeah, I felt very comfortable with the group, with the decision, and I think we got a good team here that we're going to be going forward with. So with that, I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. All right, Ms. Pastor, will you call the question?
Mr. Lamas,
Yes.
Dr. Pomponio,
Yes.
Mr. Sage,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. Estheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. All right, moving on to item G. Thank you, Rob. Moving on to item G4, update of the policy adoption.
You're being asked to approve the adoption of the updated Lusk-Albertson policies. These updates were recommended policy manual changes from Lusk-Albertson. The committee, Dr. Darlene Pomponio, Andy Green, Sean Sage, and myself met on Tuesday, July 21st and Tuesday, August 4th to review these changes. We would recommend these to the board for full approval. Due to the time-sensitive nature of the new Title IX regulations, we also need to waive a first reading of these changes.
All right, any questions for staff? Seeing none. Somebody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to waive the first reading and approve the updated Lusk-Albertson policies as presented by the Board of Education Policy Committee.
Thank you.
Support.
Second. Thank you. So I have Pomponio and Sage on that one. All right. Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Pastor, will you please call the question? Roll call vote.
Dr. Pomponio,
Yes.
Mr. Sage,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. Estheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Lamas.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you for the work of Policy Committee on that. All right. We're going to go to item H, which is our consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the June 28, 2020 summer retreat minutes and July 14, 2020 regular board meeting minutes. Number 2, HR update. And number 3, the disbursements for July 2020.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Support by Mr. Craig. Any
Yes.
discussion? All right. Seeing none. Ms. Pastor, will you please roll call vote? Call the question.
Mr. Estheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Lamas,
Yes.
Dr. Pomponio,
Yes.
Mr. Sage,
Yes.
Mr. Craig.
Yes.
Thank you. Consent agenda passes. All right. We're going to move to item I, which is employee representative. Do we have any employee representatives that have either submitted a form or that are here now that wish to speak?
None that I know of.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go down to item J, information and announcements. Any board members wish to be
Mr.
heard?
President,
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Pomponio.
through everything, I just want to say to my fellow board members, thank you for all the time and research and energy you put into the board. Thank you.
I'll add to that if I can.
Mr. Sage, go ahead.
Again, obviously, I'm the odd man out on this one. respect the heck out of everybody on this board. I can't say it enough. May not always agree 100%, but I respect the decision, the opinion. Let's move forward and do the best we can with it.
Sounds good.
I'll support both of those comments.
Mr. President,
Go ahead, Mr. Green.
I know very well what it's like to stand alone on, but I don't know what it's like to stand alone, at least on the convictions of something that's this strongly believed by both sides. So I just have to say I respect everybody and the Colt team again, the administration, the teachers, those in the community that are passionate on both sides. And Mr. Sage, I commend you. I don't agree. Or I agree. Said that wrong. I agree with everything you said. Just like I agree with everybody else. That's the problem. I think I agree with everybody. And I know that sounds, when do you hear people say that? But I just think that's how odd this whole situation is. And I think all of us worked hard and we're trying and we're still trying. And Mr. Sage, to put you got me emotional a little bit, but I'm emotional anyway. And I just respect the heck out of you for standing up for what you believe in, and the rest of us for standing up for what we believe in, and now trying to work together. Just because we disagree on certain items doesn't mean that we're not trying to do the best and come together and make the best out of the worst situations. And this is the worst situation.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, I'll take a motion for adjournment. Mr. Green?
No one wants to leave. I move we adjourn.
All right, Mr. Lamas, do I have a second for that?
Or
Wholeheartedly.
So that was Mr. Green. So Lamas and Green. All right, Miss Pastor, could you roll call vote us out?
Mr. Sage,
yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. Estimer,
Yes.
Mr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Lamas,
Yes.
Dr. Pomponio.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. We are now adjourned. It's 10:01 p.m. Thank you all for your hard work, and we'll see you next week. We'll have a little bit of earlier meeting next week for right. We're going to meet a little bit, a half hour or so before.